order of business is to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. We have a large agenda today, so I'm going to try to keep it on track. The first order of business is approval of the agenda as it was presented to you.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to remove Kelsey's review.
First, we have to approve the agenda, and then that would come as an amendment.
Okay,
So I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'm confused.
Okay? We're asking for approval of the agenda.
Of the consent agenda?
No, of the agenda as it was sent to us.
but then I would need to do what I'm doing first.
No, you make the amendment after the motion is to collect or to accept the amendment.
Can you help
Mr. Baker?
with that?
No, you move to delete items from the agenda before it's approved.
Yeah.
We're not talking about consent items, though, Mr. Baker. Does that still apply?
That still applies.
Okay. Then I stand corrected.
All right, Mr. Chair, so I would like to remove the last item on the agenda, the administrator's review, and have it put back on in February.
So there is a motion to remove the evaluation, administrator evaluation from the agenda. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I can say why, just for discussion purposes. I think if we did a 6-month one, I felt that was important to do. It was requested. But I think if there is issues, there is always a yearly evaluation, and that's only in a couple months. And if there's something that needs to be discussed, I think that's an adequate time to do it. That was my reason.
Okay. I will say that when we did the 6-month evaluation, we agreed at that evaluation that we would revisit this at 9 months. And so I'm going to support keeping it on the agenda. Any other comments or questions? Then I'm going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Berg,
Nay.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner, and Chair votes nay. Then I'm going to request a 5-minute recess to let the Labor and Contracts Council know that it's been removed from the agenda. We're recessed for 5 minutes. Reconvene the Kansas County Board of Commissioners. So we have one item removed from the agenda. I'd seek approval for the balance of the agenda as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. First item of business is the consent agenda. You received this in your packet. The items on the consent agenda are the approval of the legal minutes from the last board meeting, the approval of the auditor's warrants and claims, the approval of the human services warrants and claims, the cancellation of human services warrants, the annual Spicer Winterfest permit application, and the Minnesota Family Investment Program Joint Powers Agreement. So, I seek for the approval, or I guess we do that in the agenda, when we approve the agenda, don't we, that the consent agenda is automatically approved. So we'll go on to the public.
Go ahead. I think we
Okay,
approve
so-
now.
You gotta move.
So I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Nothing
Chair.
got pulled from the consent. So
Right. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is a public hearing on solid waste ornament, on a solid waste ordinance amendment. Mr. Gear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, Gary Gear, Canada County Environmental Services Director here before you. We have proposed and published for this public hearing amendments to our solid waste ordinance. It had been multiple years since any amendments had been proposed to the ordinance, but and primarily housekeeping, general updates to the ordinance, I believe is what I would consider them to be, as to match or mirror how our solid waste program is run. I worked with Jay Baker, our household hazardous waste and recycling coordinator, and Ryan Batten, landfill manager, myself, and several other solid waste administrators from local counties that kind of mirror how our program runs in proposing or making these amendments. Just to hit, I think, what would be the highlights, I almost want to apologize for the version that's sent. You know, it's a strike through the language that's being deleted and underlined the new, but it got kind of confusing because big sections are being deleted or struck. So, but really the gist of it is that we're updating definitions. We added a few new ones. We added the language. There's quite a few of the current definitions that just reference the state statute. Well, then you got to go somewhere else and find that. So those were updates to definitions. We're proposing to drop the requirement for a facility permit. So if another landfill was to be proposed or a recycling facility, we've had one permit application in 30 years, and Minnesota's Rule 7035 governs solid waste facilities, and they are permitted by the state. And then also, we have our conditional use permit process, which we have our planning commission, public hearing, county board review for any solid waste facility as well. So it's kind of a doubling up of a permit that, on one hand, 1 in 30 years, maybe it's not a big deal, but on the other hand, why have two-step process for somebody if somebody was to come forward when we still have a conditional use permit process available for them? Then the solid waste hauler license is proposed to be issued by the department now. Instead, currently it comes to the county board, and then it would be an annual. But in both situations, I think the gist of that is that we have authority to revoke, and that's been retained here. So any state law rule that they're violating, or any county ordinance or license information that they're not complying with, we would have the ability to then step in and revoke their license. So, and we also have the ability to work with them at our landfill facilities. So if a hauler wasn't compliant or wasn't paying their bill, we have the ability to work with them there at the landfill as well. So hauler license, recycling section's been deleted. We no longer have our own facility, and we contract for those services. So it's this kind of language that isn't applicable anymore. And then the last section that I think I'd like to highlight is the violations procedures. And we added language there for a notice of violation. And that language will mirror the process that we have in our nuisance ordinance, such that we would come before the county board to abate any nuisance violation through this ordinance. Currently, the only option is for staff to submit a file to the county attorney's office to be processed as a misdemeanor violation. So in talking with Shane a little bit about that, this gives us another option, and then gives us a little bit more of an administrative flavor to be able to handle those violations instead of going straight to court. So that's my overview of what I feel the gist of these proposed amendments are, and kind of getting us up to date with how the program is currently run.
So this is a public hearing,
Correct.
and so I'm going to open it up for anybody who has any comments regarding the proposed ordinance changes.
You bet.
Mr. Chair, is this the time when commissioners can ask questions too, or do we wait till the public hearing portion is over?
I don't think you're asking for any action today, are you? Is it's a public hearing? Oh, all right. Yes, by all means.
So my,
But it is a public hearing, so we'll
Yep.
close the public hearing after.
okay. So my question is, are any of these changes, how does it affect the public? I mean, someone coming in, they go, hey, this, it wasn't done this way before. Is there anything like that would kind of shock people or kind of?
There's really not, and there's this kind of it's how we handle our solid waste stream is kind of what this ordinance addresses. So, all solid waste garbage services are contracted between private individuals and their contractors, so we're not involved in that step. We do contract with the recycling program, but that's going to be a standalone, so this ordinance wouldn't be impacting that contract negotiation or discussion or how the public would perceive something or see it.
Okay. It doesn't affect anybody bringing stuff to landfill?
Correct.
Okay.
Not at all. No, that's still, that's a standalone procedure process as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did you receive anything from the public, Mr. Gear?
I have not heard any feedback since the notice was published.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, please.
Commissioner
Any feedback from the people we contract for these services, the recycling services at all? Are they,
I spoke with all the 3 licensed haulers that we
Okay.
have. Well, we actually have 4, but one, we have West Central Sanitation, Waste Management, Ace Roll-Offs, and TKI, Tom Kramer Incorporated. Tom Kramer does a very minimal amount here, so I didn't actually speak with anybody from their office. The others I all spoke with, and they understood the changes and did not have a problem with those. So that's the biggest impact, back to Commissioner Anderson's question. It would
Yes.
be any change to them, and they all supported
Yes,
the language.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. Gary, you made us work for this one.
Yeah, I did.
Just a couple of items, and I visited with you about these, most of this briefly. I was just looking very briefly here. There's a spot or two in here where it says the county board will, by motion, establish the tipping fees. Primarily, that had been resolution in the past. Is it a distinction without a difference? Just
I think it's
Doesn't
just a
matter which-
distinction without a difference as far as I understand.
okay.
Correct.
And then there's also a long section that is being deleted that states that the county board would also act as an appeals board. And I assume that is taken care of and addressed under the violations section, where we would still
That is correct.
be that body to that end. I'm looking at from page 48 to 49. There's just several places in there where it references the board. I would be a little more comfortable if we specified county board and then added a definition for the county board in the definitions section. There's several spots in there that, just for clarity's sake, as much as anything else. And finally, I think it would be nice to have a clean copy of this once those changes are made. And so to that end, I would suggest that we keep the public hearing open until we take this up at our December 7th meeting for final approval. Is that something that you're open to?
Certainly
Is that a
can-
motion, Mr. Gardner?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So the motion
but
on the
we're still
floor
gonna-
to lay it over until the December, which meeting?
Separate.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
11th.
And leave the
11th.
public hearing open in case anybody does want to comment on that, and being able to navigate a clean copy. I think it's important for the public to be able to do that.
So there's a motion on the floor to lay this over until the December meeting on December 7th, Thursday. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? I agree, there was a lot in there.
Yes, yep. And
It gives us an opportunity to, to
review a clean
look at
copy.
both the old copy and the new copy when it's cleaned up, so
Yep, will do.
I support that.
But there was a lot of going back and forth, and I was thoroughly confused at first, and
Any other discussion?
yeah, I have-
Dwayne?
So my question is, if we postpone it to December 7th, is there going to be any problems with, on your end that you wanted this done now, or?
No, December 7th still allows us, in a sense, me time to make the transition to license applications and the amendments that I would need to make internally to those and get those completed before year end, and then we wouldn't have any hiccup with the haulers is who it would be, their renewal license. So
Okay.
we wouldn't have a lapse in coverage in a sense, so
Okay.
December 7th should not present any problem.
Okay.
appreciate
Commissioner
that.
Bergman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just want to remind the board, though, that the December 7th meeting is going to be a short meeting. It's time frame. We got an hour and a half for that meeting, so I'm not sure what the schedule is going to be like if they have time to bring that in. I am comfortable the way it was presented, and I trust the people that put it together.
Any other comments or questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor of laying or keeping the public hearing open until the December 7th meeting indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the chair will break that vote by agreeing to lay it over till December 7th, the voting night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all.
So voting in favor of keeping the public hearing open till December 7th was Commissioner Gardner, Commissioner Imdick, and Commissioner Dale Anderson. Okay, next, a general business discussion on broadband project proposals and resolutions. Mark Beshan from the EDC Broadband Committee, but I'll let you introduce yourself and who you're with.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Mark Beshan, Chair, EDC's Broadband Committee. Having Kelsey pass out just a small update to what was in your packets. Really, the update is only the first 3 pages, but I did print out the whole thing for you just for ease of use. I come here on the recommendation of the committee asking for approval of county ARPA funds for the submission of 3 different projects to the state for the border-to-border broadband development grant program. I'm going to be asking for 3 separate letters of support, 1 for each of these projects, and 3 separate resolutions approving the funds for each of these 3 projects. And I'll just describe basically the projects quickly here. So on page 1, the first page, just note that the map is not representative necessarily of the locations served. It's really just an overview of where they are in the county. So the first project is with our partner Federated Communications, telephone co-op, that we've done a project in the west side already with. This would serve the majority of Lake Andrew and Colfax townships with a little bit in Norway Lake, cleaning up St. John's, and a few in Dovry. Now, all 3 of these grants represent the same type of funding that we've done in the past with state grants. In this case, we're asking the state for 50%. Federated would put in 25%, asking the county for 15%, and the townships at 10%. The county per passing is approximately $1,876. That matches closely with other projects that we've asked for in the past. That's that project in a nutshell. I'll go with the other 2 and then maybe respond to any questions. On the second page is project 2. This is Genesee, Fallen, and Candiota townships. Same breakdown as far as the state is concerned, 50% from the state. This is with provider Meeker Co-op or Vibrant Broadband, asking for 25% from them, 20% from the county, and 5% from the townships. The county passing is $1,776 per passing, which again aligns with what we've contributed in the past. Third project is Lake Lillian Township on its own. And the reason we do this one on its own is because it would meet the requirements for the low-density project. So we can ask for additional funding from the state. So in this case, we're looking at 75% from the state, 13% from Vibrant or Meager Co-op, county at 10%, and townships at 2%. The county passing is 1608, and that again matches with similar costs that we've asked for in the past. Overall, at the very bottom, I've basically added up the three projects for you. Again, I'm not asking for something total, but each three, but basically we come in at $95,722 left in the ARPA dollars that you have allocated to broadband. So we're not asking for any additional funds, but just to use the funds that we have available. And this was the consensus of the broadband committee. So with that, I'll entertain.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Go ahead.
So-
Do it.
This is better than what we had at our meeting, what we
Yes.
discussed at our broadband meeting.
Yep.
Where are the changes on here that it improved?
So I'll show two changes first. I'll talk about the board packet first, if I can do that, and then I'll address your
Yep,
question.
okay, all right, yep.
So the only difference between the sheet that I gave you and the board packet that you received yesterday is that St. John's had an additional passing. So it's adding and essentially asking for an additional $1,800. That's the only difference in this. We just have to have the exact amounts, of course, for the resolution. So that's the only difference between the board packet from yesterday. As far as our meeting, the broadband committee's meeting, there was an error in the calculation of the cost of project one. And we were able to reduce that cost by about $600,000. And so by doing that, we were originally estimated it was going to be 17 million. Now we're down to 16,400,000. We were able to bring the cost for everybody down in that project, thereby reducing the amount that we're asking from the county and not asking for additional funds. At the committee meeting, we were talking about exceeding the ARPA dollars dedicated to broadband, but in the end, that doesn't appear to be necessary.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, so where was that error again, the 600,000?
So when they calculated the project, the estimated project cost, there was an error in basically future calculations of interest.
Okay,
And so the engineers had essentially miscalculated, added an extra year of interest that wasn't necessary.
okay.
And so that's.
So
what
that was the total cost that,
Yeah, the total cost,
Okay,
yep,
okay.
was reduced by $600,000.
Any other questions for Mr. Beshan?
I'd just like to
Commissioner
make, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a comment. You laid this out really, really well done. Very easy to follow. And a lot going on, so thank you. Good job.
And I just want to, say my thanks to staff and these projects move. Projects that used to take 5 years are now taking 3 months. We've got the engineering estimates just after November 1st. So attempting to get all of our ducks in a row to get this submitted by December 7th, which is the state deadline, takes a lot of work. So appreciate everybody's help in getting us, making this happen, so.
Well, thank you very much. So we're going to consider three different resolutions here. I think we'll handle each one of them separately. So the first resolution is Resolution 2023-46. And that would be, are the resolutions listed in the same order as the projects?
They are. So there's a resolution and then the letter of support behind it for each project. They are
Okay.
in the order of the project.
So 2023-46 is project number one as described on the front page of your handout. Commissioner Anderson.
Mr. Chair, I would like
Dale
to,
Anderson.
I would like to move Resolution 2023-46.
Do we have a motion on 2023-46? Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Second resolution is 2023-47. I assume that is project two on the
Yes, sir.
handout.
Yep.
How do you wish to proceed on resolution 2023-46?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for 2020, to pass resolution 2023-47.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on 2023-47. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Finally, we have a resolution and letter of support at 2023-48, which will be your project 3. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to pass Resolution 2023-48.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on 2023-48. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your continued hard work, and I agree with Commissioner Berg. It makes it easy, and I have and Mr. Dwayne Anderson has the advantage of seeing it, the previews at our EDC board meetings each month, so thanks again.
Is there a motion as far as the letters of support?
I think they're included in the,
Okay,
resolutions.
And we'll get that signed and.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Mark.
Next on the agenda is the Fair Board Annual Report and Update. Chad Lean and Denny Baker. Even though I announced your names, state who you are and what your purpose is here today, who you represent.
Okay, morning, everybody. My name is Chad Lean. I'm the president of Candiota County Fair, and this is Denny Baker, past board member. I guess basically what we're here for today is I'd like to just kind of be upfront with our funds and our stuff and get it so that you guys always get to see that every year. Show you what our things look like. If you look at, like in our last 3 years, we give you all a book to look at. Not that you want to look at it today or while we're sitting here, we're not going to go that deep into it. But in our 21 and 22 years, it showed that we profited had a couple of really good years, like making $50,000 to $60,000. So we started working towards a project, seeing that we were making money. Well, this year, when we got our project going, our end of our years, I just want you, when you look at it, it doesn't look as promising as it has in the past years. The reason for that is we incurred some costs that usually we don't see and we didn't budget for in our 23 project or budget. So some of those things were like engineering fees, $24,000. We got hit with an electrical bill from Welmer Municipal Utilities for about $30,000. So that kind of zapped us pretty good. We always do budget $15,000 to $20,000 for our buildings. That money was spent also. So in the end of it, we did turn out good, but we spent a lot of money that we didn't expect to spend. So I guess with that, if there's any questions on the book, if you've had time to look at it, if you haven't, take the time to look at it if you want to. And if you do have questions, give us a call.
I think we're seeing this kind of for the first time, so we really haven't had a chance to go through it. But are there any questions for Mr. Lean or Mr. Baker?
Mr. Chair, I have one a little bit kind of related, but not really. I was just wondering how the project ended up, how it turned out.
The project ended up very, very well. Right now, they're 99% done, I would say.
Okay.
Yesterday, they were out and actually covered all the dirt for the winter, so it's all permanently seeded now.
Okay.
They do have some stuff to do from the bathroom down to on the west end where we had some sewer lines replaced.
Okay.
Then, of course, in the spring, they'll put the second lift of tar on and then put up all the chain link fence that needs to be done yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? So, Mr. Lean, if I recall, this is sort of a phased project that's going to go on for a number of years.
We'd like to continue going on, but right now we need to pay for the one we got. So, with you guys' support from last year, I think we've requested funds from you for $1 per person, and I don't know where that sits. So hopefully we're going on with that. We also have many other places we're going to start talking with to get, for at the end of the year, it always seems to be easier to talk to big companies and get on their agendas and budgets at that time. So you know, and as soon as we get a chunk of this paid for, yes, we're gonna keep moving on, keep moving forward. The next one would be bathrooms. We really need to look at our bathroom situation. Right now, I'm working with Lake Country Mechanical, trying to get a price for that, so we can get it out for grants, and looking at stuff like that.
So at this point, 2025 does not have a construction plan, or 2024, I'm sorry.
No, nothing in 2024,
Okay.
other than building maintenance.
And then the electrical bill that kind of I shouldn't say blindsided you, surprised you maybe at the amount. Is
It
that going
actually
to
did
cover
blindside
future
us
work
because
too?
it was something I didn't realize that the municipal utilities would hit us with, because they're usually the ones that supply you with the power. Why would, you know, I mean, if you're out in the country, they run a line past your house, yeah, you're responsible for the transformer up. That part I understood, but when it was to move lines and do this, and then all of a sudden I'm paying $7,500 for a new transformer, and or it was $10,000 to bring wire from over here, it was like, okay, well, they were nice enough and gave us a $10,000 reprieve on it, but it was still $32,000, I think, at the end of the day.
Yep.
And with our lighting updates that I did know about, we stayed under on that by about 20,000.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Commissioner Berg?
Yes, first off, you asked the question about, is it still, what happened to your request in the budget? I believe it's still in the budget, and we
Correct.
approved that, so it's still.
Okay, perfect.
Next board meeting, I believe that's going to be taken care of. I did have a question. I did get a call from one person that lives near there, and they were concerned that they thought that the water was still running out from the racetrack into the lake. And I said, with all the construction going on and there's some holding ponds, I think that's being addressed. Can you comment on that?
The racetrack part has not been addressed yet.
Okay,
That has always been the same. I think many years ago, there was an EPA study done on that. And the guy that actually did it, if I remember correctly, and I wasn't there, but he said that 90% of the oil and runoff that's actually going into the lake from that side of town is coming from the streets. It's actually not from the racetrack. So, because they do not park cars actually down in the racetrack where
okay,
the main water is. They park them outside. The only thing that happens is on the racetrack, and, you know, you maybe have, I mean, most of them run water. They don't even use antifreeze anymore, because it's just the way things are in the racetrack, you know, on the race cars. So, as far as, you know, you get your accidents here and there that leak a little bit, but
not that many.
it's nothing like it used to be when all the old cars were down in the bottom and
Yeah,
parked down there. But
Any
that
other
is-
questions or
that's in the
comments?
future.
okay,
You
thank
know,
you.
It may happen, it just depends on who comes up. You know, I know the race committee is working on trying to find some fill and actually do some work down there to do some stuff. But it's like, they come and ask us for money, and it's like, well, we don't make money on the racetrack, so if you want to improve your racetrack, go ahead and go for it.
Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say to you guys, the improvement you made out there at that entrance is nothing short of spectacular.
Thank you.
What a treat for folks to be able to walk without wondering if they're going to roll an ankle on their next step. Just, it helped, I think, the flow for everybody around there, and hats off to you and your board. Did a spectacular job with that.
Thank you very much. It's a pretty big cliff to jump off of, but we're gonna take it. And I gotta attest, you know, that we wouldn't be able to do it without the board we have. I mean, that bunch, the latest bunch we got working right now with us is just
Great.
a bunch of go-getters. So, I mean, used to be I'd call and I'd have to do it myself. I call now and I got 8 people up there to help all the time. So it's really been great.
Very good.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Berg.
yeah, I guess we got a lot of long agenda. I probably shouldn't go on and on, but I hear comments every now and then about, gee, Candiac County has such a good fair compared to some of these other counties, and wish we had that kind of turnout, and
Yes.
so we're lucky to have it taking place here, and what you've done.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Have a great
I think
Thanksgiving.
Denny's got a couple
Oh,
of things
Denny,
he wants
go
to
ahead.
throw at you too.
I'm always the money guy. We're coming to you today. We'd like to apply or ask the board for $100,000 from the FARP and from possibly a reserve fund. And the reason is because we fell behind with some of this that we thought we had covered. We didn't. We're in the process of contacting others, and we had hoped that we could come before the commissioners. We appreciate everything you've done. I've been there 50 years, and the county board has done very well with us. And I'm pleased with that. This will be my last time. And, but we're coming today asking for that if we can. And Dale smiles because he knows what we went through at the last board meeting. I didn't get out the door.
Nope.
But irregardless, if we could do something like that, we appreciate the 43,000 that you designated at least for next year. We'll be back each year for that. That's just part of our plan, and it's part of what we put into the plan when we came here to start with. So we're asking for that today. We'll answer any question. That's why we gave you the annual report. We haven't done that every year, which is our fault, but we will continue to do that. And we just had a meeting Sunday night with a few of the board members on how we're going to value and raise the other dollars, and we're doing well. Our bank is working very well with us, and it's working out well. But that's a request we have today. We won't take any more time, other than if you have a question about it, we'll answer the question.
Commissioner Anderson, Dale Anderson.
I guess more of a comment. So I serve on the county fair board also with these guys and be able to see that side of it too. And, you know, going back to what Corky said, I think that's so true that our fair is looked upon as a pretty monumental place for people to come to every summer. And I think that the improvements that need to be made for handicap accessibility on the fairgrounds because of the hills that are involved in it, but yet the beauty of that whole fairgrounds is pretty astounding. So I just, you know, really like to thank everybody for the help with this project that's been given. And the more projects that can get done, the more beautiful that fairgrounds will be and the better it'll be. So that's kind of, I think, what they're looking for and what I think that we should, as a board of commissioners, be looking for is a place that we can be proud of to show off our things for our whole county.
Thank you. Anybody else? I just want to clarify one thing, Mr. Baker. You're asking for $100,000 to come out of ARPA or county reserve funds. Is that on top of the
Yes.
increase that
Yes, it is.
that is in the preliminary budget? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair. We're going to be addressing ARPA funds even later today on our
Yep.
agenda. I see that. So it's appropriate time to bring this forward. And it's laid out already a number of funds. If there is not enough funds in there that the board feels that way, what happened if you did not get any funds or did not get the whole 100,000
We'll
funded?
continue to strive to raise the funds to pay it off.
But,
We're not bashful about it.
sure.
The board felt when this was all presented 2-3 years ago, that we kept working on it, that when we went to the bank was more than willing to work with us.
Okay.
And the bank is Heritage. We don't make any bones about that. We're dealing with the Pennock office, and they've spread it out, so we've got time and basis. We're just looking ahead. We know the next project for us is bathrooms. If you have used the bathrooms, you'd agree with me. And so that's one of the things. We don't know. Once we had a price at $300,000. And I know from State Fair side, bathrooms cost us $1 million to $1.75 million. But that's a whole different ballgame. So we're trying to move it ahead. And we've sat long enough, and when the board really discussed this, Chad and I sat back and just listened to what was happening, and the encouragement was there. So, will we get it paid for? Yep.
All right, well, thank you.
With your regular donation towards us and a little bit of money, we can make a yearly payment. That's not the problem. We've got to spread out. It was just,
Okay.
do we want to wait 25 years to have it done? You know, because 25 years from now, what's the rest of the fair going to look like? So, but in order for us to be able to afford it, that's how far we had to push it out. And we just continue asking for little bits here and there and get it paid out faster is what we're after.
Okay. Thank you.
This brochure that you've got today is strictly, pretty much the first paragraph on the back, meant for the Board of Commissioners. It's gonna be reprinted a little bit. We're going out to individuals. We've had individuals call us, and so we are working in that light too. So we thank you for your time. If there are no more questions, we'll let you move on. You got a busy day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up on the agenda is the new vendor turnkey corrections skillet kitchen jail food service contract. Sheriff Tollefson.
Morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Yeah, in your package, you have the proposed.
Sheriff, you want to state your name
Oh,
and who
sorry.
you are for the record?
Sheriff Eric
Who's
Dawson.
listening?
And then also, I have with me Jill Knutson, who's our jail administrator. Before you in your packet is the proposal from Turnkey Solutions, who is the owner of Skillet Kitchen. And this would be a request to move our food service contract to that company. We're currently with Summit Foods at this time. So we're looking at, this is an increase in the per meal cost, but we were just looking to provide more of a consistent, reliable, better quality food service for the jail population. There's been a few issues over the past year or two with reliability and also the quality of the food that we've been receiving. So
Sheriff, on Summit, how long have we been with them?
about 16 or 17 years. They were originally, the contract was signed with, I'm going to screw this up, Avians LLC back in 2006, but then the company has then changed hands a couple of times, I believe.
So the shortfalls that you've had, I assume they've been, you've tried to get them to address them and you haven't had
Yes.
any luck in getting them?
We have, there's, obviously been complaints from inmates as well as staff. Probably the most concerning has been just their staffing levels that they've had, where they've been unable to complete the meals. There's been a lot of mistakes, especially when it comes to food allergies and special diets, renal diets, diabetic diets, that kind of thing. And there's been times when correctional officers have actually had to go down to the kitchen and fulfill meals because they didn't have staff present.
So did their contract have any clawback in it for failure to perform?
I mean, it's the same contract from 2006 with an amendment usually annually just that addresses pricing of meals. But as far as, yeah, they would be essentially in violation. I mean, there's been documented times where they've flat out failed to fulfill what they're supposed to do.
So I think I recall a $200,000 higher fee for this service than the other one. Is that in your budget or?
Well, it wasn't initially, but it's currently in there now. I believe we added that as a result of what's been going. This kind of developed sort of came to a head within the last 3 months when we had some pretty significant issues that it developed. Staff walked out of the door one day, and I mean, it's been a pretty problematic.
Any other questions or comments for the sheriff?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Chair,
Berg.
thank you. Just a general question. Prairie Lakes Youth Program, I believe they are going to be contracting with the same organization. Is there any options or looking at doing this together? Is it even feasible since facilities are so close and we serve the same population but different ages, that we get a better deal if you had a contract together? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Correct. Currently, our food service vendor Summit does contract independently with 4 other entities, PLYP being one of them, CABS and CARE. So they prepare the meals, they use our facility, prepare the meals for these other entities, and then transport the meals to them. I believe the count is a total of all of the other entities, another 70 to 80 meals a day that they make. Turnkey is interested in entertaining and maintaining those contracts with those other entities as well. So, so what happens is they utilize our kitchen to prepare these meals, and then we get a stipend or like a commission back for those meals that we prepare.
So if we're preparing them, do we get any break at Prairie Lakes Youth Program? We don't know, I suppose.
That'd be a good question for them.
So we save money there, but we pay more there maybe. I don't know.
No, we just, for Prairie Lakes, we currently pay their daily rate plus the medical expenses for people that, or for juveniles that we have housed there.
Okay, thank you. Good answer.
Yep.
So I certainly would like us to provide good service. However, somehow we have to figure out how to pay this, and maybe this is a question for Administrator Baker, is if this $200,000 wasn't in the preliminary budget, do you have any thoughts on how that would be handled?
Sorry, I've met with Sheriff Tollefson and the CFO Karen Anderson. We were able to take out 200,000 and place this back in. But the really driving factor for the 2024 budget, this doesn't make a dent in it. It's the wages that we're working with right now. Excuse me. So I was okay putting this in because we were able to take around 200,000 out. So that was this situation was more of a wash. It's working with the more accurate wages that we have now.
Okay, and so I suppose that will, where it came from will be discussed at the Truth and Taxation meeting then?
Yep.
Okay.
And I might add, to commissioners, that there is a potential for, I'm not sure it's overly significant, but also a potential for a little bit more revenue based on Turnkey currently having our commissary at the jail. If they have the kitchen, then they can enhance the commissary options, which then give inmates more options for à la carte, additional things that they can purchase and that kind of thing, so.
And do those funds that they use on à la carte or vending machines and stuff, those are funds they go into a dedicated fund, if I recall, right?
Correct, it's called a sundry fund.
That is sundry fund, that is available to your department to use for discretionary budget items?
Correct, for certain items that pertain strictly to the jail and the care of the inmates, yes.
Any other questions or comments? So you're looking for action on this today to approve this contract, even though we don't know exactly where in the budget it's going to come from?
Well, we have a 60-day window to give notice to Summit that we do not intend to renew, so, yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Mr. Chair, I can say, we had 200,000 budgeted for Big Candy East Park. We had it budgeted for 23 and 24. So I spoke with our Assistant County Engineer, Jeremy Pfeiffer. What are we going to be using this with what we're finding right now? So we didn't think we would use that 200,000 for 2024. So we removed that. And then within the capital equipment fund, within the sheriff's line item, we had budgeted around 331,000. We removed a little over 200,000 of that because we're going to utilize our public safety aid dollars instead of levy dollars. The public safety aid dollars we received, I'm going to screw that dollar amount up, but it was like 961,000.
926.
Okay.
Roughly.
Yep.
So I assume that
Roughly. So that's where that's where the dollar amounts came from to offset putting this back in. So it is somewhat of a wash.
So the 200,000 is an annual increase?
Yeah, and of course, that's an estimate because our weekly cost for feeding inmates is based on population, and that fluctuates. I mean, we've been as high as 180 and as low as 110, so it bounces back and forth. But to date, we're looking at a daily average of 145 to 150 right now for 23.
Mr. Chair, so you're saying this is an annual increase after this of 200,000. So are those going to be levy dollars then, moving forward?
An annual, that would have to be.
So we have to look at that would be close to a percent of the increase then, right?
No,
Or 0.5%?
roughly.
Yeah, okay. And also, you took a big hit early this year on the healthcare, correct?
We certainly did,
Yeah.
yes.
And what was that, approximately $1 million?
I'm sorry?
Was that approximately $1 million in your budget?
Right.
Correct.
1.2.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, an increase of 600,000, yes.
Oh, 600, okay. All right. Mr. Chair, I so move that we approve this agreement.
So I have a motion on the floor to approve the agreement, or approve the sheriff entering into an agreement with Turnkey Corrections, Skillet Kitchen. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any questions or comments?
Roger. I just want to make a comment. I think it's really important to make sure that there's getting to be so many weird things in the world of food allergies and diets, and I think that's very important. And if that's getting to be a big issue, to me, that's the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is, you know, there's a lot of people that can't handle things that are in certain foods. So I think this is an important thing that it's done right. So thank you guys for putting the time into putting this together.
Thank you.
I would agree with that. I do have some concerns about taking money out of our parks funds and moving them to the sheriff's department or any other departments for that matter. So that's my comment. Any other questions or comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Happy
Commissioners.
Thanksgiving. Anybody need a break?
No, keep going.
Next on the agenda, the Health and Human Services lobby and potential change presentation and discussion. Barbara Marks.
Bear with me for a minute while I figure out your stuff. No. Let me know when you're ready. It went completely blank. Oh, it did? Yeah. Yeah, it's blank. IT, are you able to come in here?
Let's take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Reconvene the Kennesaw County Board of Commissioners meeting and welcome to the podium Ms. Marks from Engen and Associates, even though I introduced you, introduce yourself for the
Sure.
record.
Hi, I am Barbara Midgarden Marks, and I am with Engen Associates. We're an architecture firm located downtown Wilmer. Just out of curiosity, I took a look, and Richard's first year of business, he did a project with the county. And I looked in my first year with Engen Associates. I did a job with the county. So we've had a good relationship with the county for many, many years and look forward to continuing it. So thank you for having me here. I want to start by saying that this is a discussion, not a presentation. This isn't a presented idea. This is the idea that we want to tell you where we're at and get a feel for where we should be going. So we're looking for input. If you have questions, please feel free to stop me. I'd prefer a discussion rather than presentation. So we initially met to Andy Thorson asked me to come in, and one of the things that we were looking at is a maintenance project. And the maintenance project here is that you have a lot of wall covering. It's starting to peel. It's fading. It's not presenting in the best way possible anymore. And we looked at the idea of a project where we would remove the wall covering, repair the walls, and paint. In the course of doing that, we also discussed other items of concern in the building, including the fact that the workstations through much of the building are original and maybe not serving the staff as well as they could be. We've discussed how the delivery of service has changed, not just over the years, but specifically how a lot of stuff switched after COVID, and how the delivery of service may just be different now, and there may be new best practices to think about. And then by the second meeting we had asked to form a committee and bring members of your board on board so that we could have a little bit of that big picture input on things. When we started, we talked about memorable goals of what we were actually trying to do, and I am going to read them even though I know you all can read. We want to create public spaces that are open and inviting, providing comfort for many different groups while exuding a professional feel. I want to point out that these were developed in our group. They weren't projected on you. We want to provide staff with workspaces that are not only allow people to do their job, but also feel appreciated while doing it. Staff should feel good when they come to work. And then we added the people who are served by the county should feel seen, respected, and represented in this building. So those are the driving forces on what our conversations have been. So I just wanted to bring a few images for you, and you can see it says you only have one chance at a first impression. So I'm going to share my own personal story with you of the first time I ever came here. I walked in the front door, and it was to see the former county administrator, and I stood at the bottom of those steps for probably a good 3 or 4 minutes when I finally gave up and went over to Human Services to find out where I was supposed to go, because it was a confusing entry to me. Now, that is just my personal experience, but I have shared that with other people, and other people have said a similar thing. So you can see you come in, and there's a very, very strong thing that's pulling you straight to those stairs with the floor mats, and even just by the location of the stair itself. You look around that space, and it's clean, it's well kept, it's maintained, but there's a lot of clutter, and I'm going to point out it's empty. You come back, some of the finishes are a little dated, but that's something you can deal with. That's neither here nor there. But again, everything is well kept. It's just not very clear where you go. So what we were trying to do here is we're trying to pick or find a point of departure, and we're asking for help and input on this. What we're looking at is what could the big picture be? By doing this, we need to do a few things first, and we've done part of it already. we've got a building committee established, and that's that group that will communicate directly to you guys. We've got our staff administrative team. They've been on from the beginning. Your design team, I'm representing a whole bunch of people that are somewhere else. We have many people that help with things. But then we also have staff, and I want to be clear that we haven't had staff meetings yet. I know we've talked to different department heads that moving forward, we would like to have discussions so that we can kind of understand things and go through things further. Again, want to be clear, what we're showing you right now, nothing has been decided. These are just for inspiration and discussion and to talk about what could be. So this first image on your left is essentially the way the building is right now. What you're going to see moves the stair. And I want you to see that it could go left, it could go right. It doesn't, that's not a finite decision. This is just discussion and inspiration. So we want to talk about possibility. What could we do? Well, in this scenario, it would be a change in the delivery of service, but we need input from staff before that can be fully vetted. But it's the idea that when you come into this building, you have a place, a person, a face that you can go straight to. It's clear, and that person is the one who answers the first question. It's taking over the lobby for being a waiting space. Think about when you go to a surgery center or even a restaurant, and electronics are notifying you when you're next. It's involving IT and the decisions of what you're doing. It's really opening things up, giving furniture choices. Again, with the electronics, charging places, people could sit at a low table and fill out their paperwork. They could sit at a high table. They could stand. Their option. Those are the spaces that make people feel the most welcome. And then it's really getting your lobby to do more work for you. And then those internal lobbies that are in the other departments can be turned over to the departments for other more hands-on use. So in this version, we're also showing replacing the railing on the stairway as well as the balcony. That's something that doesn't necessarily have to happen, but the railings are really, really kind of visually heavy, and it's just giving things a new facelift. So I'm just going to scroll through a few of those pictures so you can see the light coming down from up above. You can see up in the atrium space, you have pops of color and lights, and you can look up, and the idea of that is if you're going to have more people in here, then from day one we have to think about acoustics, because acoustics are always a little bit trickier to deal with. So we want to figure out a way to have some sound absorbing items up there as well. But again, then we're going to take that real estate that would be absorbed from those departments, turn them back to the departments, and then in a different phase of work, we could figure out the best practices for that. So that's your inspiration. I do want to point out one of the things that I did is I Googled a mission statement for the county, and I found a mission statement for Health and Human Services. So that's the one I pulled on here. But you have more departments in this building, even though it's called Health and Human Services. But, part of it is remembering why we're here. What are we trying to do for the people, and what's the best way to get back to it? And when you look at this mission statement, it doesn't feel all that different than some of those goals that we talked about. So that is where I'm at. My question to you would be, what's next? Again, there's no decision being made today, but but the idea is to show you that there are things that we could do. There are things that would involve best practices with staff. We know from a maintenance point of view that the workstations aren't going to be around long-term. They need to be looked at, and they need to be in a plan to replace. But we're almost trying to do some of those earlier steps so that it positions you to make the right decisions later. I will be clear and say that we do have a maintenance project that's carved out, and that maintenance project is still the wall covering removal, because whether we do this project or not, that still needs to be done. But one of the things that we've talked about is if we know a space might be going away, well, then maybe that room might be left out of the wall covering removal. I mean, so we're looking, we've got this project going here, but we're also asking what needs to be thought about up here. So that is the
Any
discussion for
questions
now.
for Ms. Marks? Commissioner Dale Anderson.
I guess I don't really have a question. I really liked your drawings and your vision of the entry. I totally agree with you. When I first came in here as a young person, it's very intimidating to me to walk into our building. If you don't go look at the little sign and see where you're supposed to go, you really don't have an idea if you're not familiar with this building. And I think it would be a great improvement to have somebody there that could answer them questions. I guess I really do like the other part of it that you've got in that drawing of places for people to work, because I've watched people sitting there on the benches trying to hold their paperwork and working on their paperwork. And I know that would be very frustrating also for people that are trying to sign up for programs and stuff to not have a place to work. So I guess my comment is I really do like your drawing and your vision of the entry. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I just went, that would be really cool when I seen you send that out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bergen.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions, and I agree. You come in here and you don't always know where to go. But
Yeah.
also, the mission statement, I understand that quite well from history of the Health and Human Services. But it's more than just Health and Human Services here,
Right.
too, as well.
Right.
And that's the point we have to make. But I do like the stairway. And I think that'd be a major expense to move that. And so I have some questions about estimated costs of all
Sure.
this project. But before I go there, is there other ways to look at a receptionist coming in? We have a couple offices on the side when you come in. Is there a plan B besides
Yeah, you're
this plan?
spot on that this is
Yeah.
not the final solution.
Sure.
This is a solution, which is why, and I'm going to go back here, which is why we showed that slide.
Sure.
So yes, I fully agree on that. This solution was trying to get the stair to not be a main focal point, and the reason this came into play, can I call on some people behind me to agree or disagree? When I came, so one of my earlier visits here was to go and look at those workstations in the back. And when I was brought through I'm going to call it the private spaces and moving through the building, I've been advised by numerous of your staff to not take the front stairs because they don't consider them safe. Does anybody feel comfortable echoing that, or? I would have heard that. Yeah. And they've discussed it being a tripping hazard. And so that was kind of one of the things that was our point of departure for that concept. It's not the only one, and it's not the only solution. But statistically speaking, curved stairs are a higher risk factor than a straight stair.
So I doubt if we've ever had anybody go tumbling, have we?
I don't have any data on that. I just know that I was advised to take the elevator instead of the stair.
Personally, I hate them, but any other comment? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barbara, I assume that we come to that idea that the curved stairs are a little bit more of a hazard because of the inconsistency in the
Correct.
depth of
Correct.
the.
So depending on where you step, it might be shallower or deeper.
And as someone who has tripped going up those stairs more than once, because I still can't get myself to take the elevator all the time. I still think I can make it up those stairs. It has been a concern of mine, and I am cautious when I go down there. But we're asking a lot of folks, I think, to traverse something that is that it is potentially hazardous. I agree with you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah. I mean, when I come into this building, I don't like the stairs. I agree with you. They are kind of a hazard. But then I also look at what's looked at on these photos and I can't disagree with the changes. But I haven't seen, a dollar figure.
Right.
And that's what scares me.
Right.
The receptionist thing, although it's nice, I look at the dollar figure that it costs to have somebody sit there all day. And I'm just wondering what that person would be doing other than
Sure.
just being a receptionist.
So we need to have discussions with your staff.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear on
Okay.
that. But one of the things that we've talked about, it might be, so right now you have essentially check-in and waiting spaces within each department. It would be as if that gets moved to the middle, and then perhaps, I'm not saying this needs to be thought through as a team, but perhaps those people who were meeting someone at a counter behind a door, they might rotate into this workstation so that they can keep doing their other jobs too, so that it's not just reception. It's somebody with that background and that training, but again, has to be defined better with staff meetings.
Okay, and then my last thing is, I think me as a commissioner, I come in here about once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'm one of the last people that should be asked for input on how to lay this out. I hope that you can have input from the people that,
Yep.
like department heads or even just, all the,
Yep.
any employee, come with their ideas or input so that it's not just done because it looks good.
100%.
It's done because it's effective or, it flows better.
Right, and honestly, the thing that triggered the change was probably the comments on the stair, but the opportunity is to change how we work.
Go ahead.
I just want to say a few things, and I appreciate what Barbara's brought today. And like we have said, nothing has been decided at our last building committee meeting. We thought we would bring something to the full board to give you somewhat of an idea of maybe what we could work towards. And so like we've said, and what I put in the board request is we're looking for some feedback. Can we maybe move forward with a direction? Maybe it's not what we're seeing on our screen, but maybe talk with some staff. One thing, when I've toured this building many times and talked with department heads, we're short space. Some offices have extra space. Some need more meeting space. Some need more office space. Might not be office and cubicle space, but it might be meeting with clients that we're short space. I understand we have meeting rooms throughout the building, but when you're working with some clients that you want within your unit or suite, we'd like to be able to provide that for our employees and for our clients. One thing we're also looking at, and it's way different than when this building was built, it's just a different world, is the safety and security of our needs. I can say in the last month, we've had some instances, and I think just yesterday, we had quite a few officers. Just today, we've had 2 in here. And so I think that's another thing that we want to make sure that our staff and the clients and the public that's coming into this building, that they have that safety and security if something were to arise. I think that's something that we need to make sure that all of our county buildings have. And I don't think you had mentioned this too. The reason within the building committee that we started with Health and Human Services, because we're looking at all buildings, but we thought the Health and Human Services building is in need of the most maybe changes, not just aesthetics, but structural, like I said, providing more meeting rooms, offices, things like that for the employees and clients. And so that's where we are focusing right now. But the direction that we would like from the board is yay or nay. Yes, move forward. If you have an idea, please contact Barbara or myself or Andy, because we don't want to halt on this, and we can make small adjustments that are maintenance adjustments. We wouldn't have to even do a big capital project. We could look at more maintenance things if we don't want to do any structural changes as well. But really today, it's just looking at what are the board's thoughts and recommendations moving forward.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that, so Commissioner Dale Anderson and I are on this committee, and I know there was a few meetings prior to us being brought in. So we're brought in on the third meeting, and I think we have an expenditure that we approved a few months ago for Andy's request of over $100,000. So when my wife and I look at a house or a building project in our house, we sit down and we start talking about, oh, it'd be nice to open up that wall and create more light and change the cabinets and add a bathroom. We look at all those things, maybe outside the door, we want to put a patio in. We look at all those things and say, man, that would really be cool to have. But then the reality hits and say, holy crap, what might this cost? So then you pick up the phone and you start, calling your friends or contractors, people you trust, and say, okay, what are we looking at here? I think it would be really helpful for me, and to Commissioner Dwayne Anderson's comment is, the big picture. So what are we all looking at here? Are we looking at public works? Are we looking at downtown? Are we looking, what are we all looking at?
Right.
And what is the scope of the project? And then where does the money come from?
Right.
Because we talked earlier today already, we have more conversations going on about budgets.
Right.
And so all of that is, that's the question we'd ask ourselves, Judy and I, is, okay, are we going to take it out of retirement funds?
Yep.
Are we going to keep working another couple of years? How are we going to do this? So I'll let you respond.
To paraphrase you, it's hard to have a project without a budget, and it's hard to create a project without a budget without a project. So right now, that's essentially what we're asking. Can we start looking at other things to see what might make sense? We, within our building committee, and I don't think I'm going to share it here just because it's not been discussed this, but we did talk some pricing for a phase 1 and a phase 2, which is that wall covering removal that we talked about. And then we also did have a number in for alternate work, which has to do with these changes in the lobby. So some of that is defined, but that bigger picture doesn't have a full definition because the project's not fully defined. And any of you who've been through a building project, just like you mentioned, budget and project scope, they're wrapped around each other and they're reviewed all the way through, so.
Right, but I think it's going to be hard for commissioners to even give you too much of a go-ahead unless we know this is $1 million project,
But I don't know what the project is.
Right.
But it would, I think it would be helpful for us, because you're talking about the entryway, we're talking about cubicles, we're talking about paint wallpaper and in maybe more than one building. So without nailing down numbers, I'm not asking that we nail down numbers, so we get a sense for a range of where we're going to be at.
I'm going to say yes with the caveat, and that some of that was in the original proposal, I believe.
Commissioner Berg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a couple of things. Actually, speaking of cost and budget too, for your services, we haven't seen any figures at all. What does it cost for your services, may I ask? And what kind of contract or agreement do you have?
So it depends on which phase, because right now we're doing essentially 3 different projects with the county at this very moment. And we have a project that is, do you remember the percent, Andy? A percent basis contract for that wall covering and paint project. Because what we're doing right here today is undefined. We're hourly for a certain portion on this big picture project, with the idea of as soon as that's defined, we get out of that hourly and we get back to a more defined percent basis. And then we're also doing work with 5 different buildings in the county, and that is an hourly project to help define basically interior color palettes so that your maintenance people can be more efficient with their time. And somebody has a request to do something, they look at the color palette, they look at the approved products, they go, and then they're able to make a decision faster and get things done in a timely manner. So right now, both hourly and percentage, depending on which project we're talking about.
If I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah,
this
please
is something,
clarify that.
Commissioner Berg, this is something that Andy has worked with Engen and Associates for many, many years, way prior to my time. This is something that Andy has worked with Barbara on prior to my work. These are the maintenance needs that Andy would already work with Engen and Associates on. When I came on board and working with Andy, he said, hey, can we get some guidance on what we're doing here in our buildings? And I said, sure, I can work with you on this. And so that is how I kind of got into this maintenance stuff with Andy, but typically this is something he already works on and has been working on with Barbara.
The maintenance is here.
Yeah,
What
so
we're
we're just-
asking you is that big picture.
Yeah, so I just took that one step further in meeting with the staff, looking at the space needs, and said, hey, maybe we should talk about this a little bit further, and then that this has just rolled into creating this building committee, meeting with staff, touring buildings. There were funds, like this wouldn't have even been brought to my attention. There were funds in the jail budget already for 2023 to update the meeting room that they have over there. Andy was looking for guidance with paint and carpet. We don't have consistent carpet throughout the buildings. We order what we can get. And so it's just some guidance on what carpet squares we're gonna have for each building. And I think, I can say this, I think we want staff to feel valued when they're coming into their workspace. Staff spend the majority of their time during the week in our buildings. And how do we make them feel appreciated in their workspace and in their cubicles? And touring Public Works, we have some underutilized space, and how can we expand on that? And it's probably gonna cost us $0, but it's just taking that time for the staff to say, yeah, I think we can move this table over here and adjust it so we can have more of a conversational piece. But these were things that Andy has been working on with Engen and Associates for many years. He said, hey, you're new, why don't you give me a fresh look and let's start working on this, and that's how this came about.
Well, I think the real question, yeah, I know he's got a question on, I think the real question that you had was what the scope of services and the fees are and expenditures to date, but I don't know that we've really heard that yet.
We have because, as you recall, at our last building committee meeting, we had talked about how do we present this to the board, right? And so it was, do you put the horse in front of the cart, or do you put the cart in front of the horse? And the recommendation from the two commissioners on that committee was we need to get something in front of the board. So we don't have a scope yet. That is not something that we have worked on because we wanted to get the full 5 commissioners' input on, hey, stop this. We don't want, you just work on maintenance. And that's okay. Then we do that. If all 5 were say, let's continue looking at this, we don't know if it's going to come to fruition in 24 or 25, that's okay. But my understanding from that meeting was we wanted to get the 5 commissioners aware of what's been going on.
So, sorry, no answer. Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barbara, one of the things that, let's just stipulate that we're all going to be concerned with money. Okay, we will have a discussion at some point in time as to what it is that we can do. But I would encourage you and the building committee to look at broad possibilities. Sometimes you just don't continue to do things the way you've always done them.
Right.
As you alluded to, COVID changed a lot of things for us. There are probably higher and better uses of certain areas of this facility. So I would encourage you to do that broader work, and I would encourage my friends on the board to allow that process to take place. We can always whittle things down later, but let's not get too hung up on costs right away. Let's see what the scope ends up being, and then we can have those discussions later. We'll get more solid recommendations from the committee, and we'll have better information on which to proceed.
Sure.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
I guess I have a comment and a question. My comment is that's why, as a building committee, I think that's why we brought it, because if there wasn't an interest to keep going on with this project, then we need to stop, because we are wasting money then by continuing looking at different options for a project in this magnitude. But I guess my question is, for you, Barbara, is do you have just like a ballpark timeline? Let's just say we did this entry like you've got the picture. What's just a ballpark timeline of what a project of that magnitude would take? I mean, it's going to take some time is what I'm guessing.
I hate to say this because I'm a planner and I like to plan out my answer. And it's in months, less than a year, I would say.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking. Because in reality, when you look at the image on your screens, you're moving the stair, maybe or maybe not, changing the handrails, and everything else is essentially finishes. That's not challenging work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
I guess that was way shorter than what I thought you were going to say, but I go back to the building committee thing because that's
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
That's just for the lobby
Yep.
portion.
No, I
So if
understand.
we're going back and doing all the work that I think needs to be defined by staff, including this that needs to be defined by staff, it is a bigger picture.
Right. No,
And
I
I presume that we would do it in phases. It would
Right.
be like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kind of thing.
Right.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to
No,
clarify.
that's what I meant. I just meant the
Yep.
entry because I know there's more to it. I guess I'm going to go back to the building committee thing because, we sit and talk about it in the building committee and we discuss things, but if we don't have guidance by the whole board here of what people want to do, then it makes it really hard because we kind of just sit there and beat it against the wall and we don't keep going with it. So my hope, I guess, from this discussion and from bringing this to the whole board is that we can either say, hey, we're going to keep working at this and come back at some point in time with a cost and the scope, or we're going to go back and just do the finishes or do the colors and that stuff. So I just go back to that, and that's what I guess I'm hoping we can get out of this discussion.
Mr. Chair. So I just have, this is the first time I've seen this, so, so I'm trying to think who should be involved, to have more say. And I'm just thinking right now, might be a good idea to have somebody from probation take a look at how things are going to be done. If you're going to do things in the, office space or,
So that's
that
the exact point
you
of
maybe
this
need
graphic.
somebody in probation on there just to make sure that everything is safe and secure from their standpoint.
So we would have representatives of every department.
Okay, because I don't know who
Yeah.
all is on, like.
Maybe
building
not
committee, so-
necessarily renters, probably wouldn't have the same input as established staff of the county.
Okay.
But they'd still have comments, the ability to comment.
All right, because I think they should have input.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
just to
And
make
that's
sure
why I kind
everything's
of keep
secure.
going back here because I know Caroline's here and she's my blanket representative of everybody else in the building.
So to answer your question, Commissioner Anderson.
Don't own
is,
it, you don't have to.
Caroline Kahn, Dale Anderson, myself, Kelsey sent out an email asking if anybody was interested, and Andy,
Okay,
as well as Kelsey,
okay.
have been meeting on this committee. But I'm in favor of let's keep moving forward, but at the next presentation, I want to see some numbers in order for me to justify going any further than that, because
So are you saying numbers for the big picture? Because we did present at our last meeting, we presented the numbers for what you saw today.
So tell me what the cost of the entryway do you think will be? I don't think the board knows this.
And that's the
committee.
one that I said that we had, so the cost was done before, I want to be clear, before the graphics were done. And I'm hesitant to say it, and I can tell Kelsey.
And then the other question would be, where would this money come from?
I think if we have the go-ahead to move forward with this, we can better define who
Yeah.
is on the committee. Like Dwayne said, we would get corrections. We would probably have more, no offense, Caroline, more than Caroline as on the committee,
Yeah.
and probably some more of Tammy Joe's team. Then we can come back with more of a defined scope. Right now, this is just the big picture. Can we move forward with something? Once that's done, then maybe, and we would still have 2 commissioners, but maybe, January, February. I don't see a hard timeline on this. I want it to be a working effort. I really don't. I just think, I think the staff to get their input. I don't think we're gonna be moving people around. We've talked about structural changes. We don't know if we want to do that, but I think we could come back with more of a defined answer for you. We just wanted to bring this to the full board, to let you all know what we're working on. This is an example. It might not be what is the final answer. We just need to get the go-ahead that this is, and this was guidance from the building committee to bring this forward. And then once we can gauge a consensus, then we will move forward, loop more staff in, because we didn't want to waste a lot of staff's time if the board said no more.
Right.
Well, I don't think we're hearing no more. I'm just hearing
More information next
more
time.
information, exactly.
Yep.
So, do you want to?
Yes, I'd like to comment, but are you finished or?
Yeah, I'm looking for, Barbara's looking for direction. The
Yeah,
engineer's
sure.
looking for direction.
Yeah.
So either in the form of a motion or would be appreciated.
Okay, I just like to make some comments so that we go forward with this, that we take our time and look at drafts and be careful. Because I was around when this building was built.
Right.
And was not a popular project, not at all. And even knocking on doors not that long ago, people still remember that. And this building is a beautiful building, it really is. And thanks to, Andy and the maintenance, it looks good.
Yep.
But it needs work. And we have to do something. And but for the public and the taxpayers with, the levies and the money we have been spending, I think we have to be careful of how large a project we do take on, especially, this is the first I heard about the entrance per se. Or minor tweaking would be one thing of the entrance, but this is a major change to this building. And are we, if we did that, go.
Yeah, can I add a little something to
Sure.
that? So technology, you were on this building to begin with, and there were good decisions made, excellent decisions made. But we don't have control over the way the world changes around us. And one of the things that's changed so drastically and provided so many opportunities is technology. So the way your building is laid out was laid out perfectly for paper. And now we have different opportunities because we have things like this. And it allows you to do things potentially in a different way. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's a lateral move, and sometimes it's worse. But that's part of this discovery process. I mean, the first time I ever came into this building, there were always 30 to 40 people waiting down in that lobby inside Health and Human Services. And now, I think in the last year or two that I've been here, 4 to 6 on the high end. So that space could potentially be turned back over to your staff. And then that could be something that they could have a, better return on investment of it. So those are the things that we want to explore with them and present to you.
Commissioner Dwayne.
Okay.
Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So the thing with me, it's basically a first look.
Yeah.
And I don't like the stairs. I don't like a lot of the things that are in the building. But then when I see that, it's like, I also have the sticker shock, what's this going to cost? And I got to answer to my,
Right.
voters or constituents and because I literally come in here once a week, maybe twice, or once every 2 weeks or something like that. And so I can easily put up with it.
Right.
But it's the people that work here. And then I, like I said, I got to also, talk to my constituents because they'll be, why are you wasting money on something like that? So I got to be able to justify it.
Right.
And so I like that you're looking at it.
Yeah.
I do not like the stairway that, is currently here. But, at the same time, I can deal with it. I just need to see,
Yeah.
dollar figures, at least an estimate or a
Yep.
range or
Oh,
something.
for sure.
So that we know what we're dealing with.
May I add to that?
Okay, yep.
One of the things that I also think, and this is the part that I can't answer, you and your people need to answer what I'm about to say. The hidden cost in every project is people. And we completed a project, I'm just going to say a generic project, where they wanted to capture leftover space that was essentially wasted in their mind. And so they were taking a second floor space and manning it as, well, to be honest, it was a clinic. We threw a curveball idea at them, And instead of doing that, we did an addition that was back-to-back with their existing nurses station. And everybody was against it because it was the more expensive project. And the director of nursing came back 2 days later and she said, I can staff with this with 2 less people. And within 7 years, the more expensive project was the cheaper project. So that's the part that I can't bring to the table other than reminding you to think about people are a hidden cost. And they're also your most valuable asset. And like Kelsey was saying, you know, let's make this a good place to work, a good place for people to come in, to walk in the door, and these people represent me and they're helping me.
So I'm going to turn this, we have to wrap this conversation up because we're falling behind quite a bit. This would have been a good discussion for a work session.
Yeah.
So I'd entertain a motion to give Ms. Mark some direction.
Mr. Chair, I would just suggest to us that there appears to be enough consensus among us here right now that a formal motion really wouldn't be needed, that we just allow the committee and Barbara to continue doing the work that they're doing, and we'll see them in January or February.
I'm good at that, but to Mr. Berg's point and to Mr. Anderson's point, let's see some numbers.
Yes,
Yeah.
I want, exactly.
No, and we can, and we did
Just
what we could with the
even
information we
ballpark
have.
would be
And when we have more information, we can provide more information.
All right.
It's that darn chicken and the egg.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right, and I'm going to take a moment here as she gets her equipment out of here, is that at 11 o'clock, we have the P and Z question, and the rest of the presentations are staff, other than Holly. You're up next, Holly. So if we have to shuffle things around, is staff okay with that? It would be Mr. Odens and Caroline, so that they don't have to sit through a fairly long presentation. So, all right, thank you. So, Holly, you're up next. Or did I get up? No, I didn't get out of order.
No, you're
Caroline,
quiet.
it shows that Caroline is, and Caroline and Holly together.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good morning. I'm Dr. Holly Booth. I'm our Executive Director at Prairie Lakes Youth Programs. It's nice to be back with you again. I will keep my time a little bit short out of respect for time and where we're at in the agenda. There are several topics today regarding Prairie Lakes. There's already been one this morning with the food vendor service that we have. And so we thought it would be helpful if I come and give a quick update about how we're doing at Prairie Lakes, being that's part of the conversations today as well. So a few updates on Prairie Lakes over the last year since I was with you the last time. We have 5 programs at Prairie Lakes. We have 2 programs that are a secure detention and long-term residential stay program. One of them was a non-secure, and we've recently changed that to being additional secure beds. There is a significant need in our state to have more secure beds right now for placement for youth. So we've made that change. We have a non-secure program for boys in our second building at 1804. In that program, our youth are working on independent living skills, life skills, working on employment in the community, and volunteering opportunities. We also have 2 group homes here in Wilmer, one for boys and one for girls, and they're both located in communities right in town here. In those programs, we are also working on those job skills, giving back, especially to their local neighbors. Sometimes it can be hard being neighbors with group homes, and so we really work to work on those relationships with our neighbors. Along with that, in our programs, we have a lot of therapy supports for our youth. We have art therapy and art therapists that are part of our team. We do a lot of dirt therapy when there's not snow on the ground. We have a garden, memorial garden, and services in that manner. We also have pet therapy, so our dogs come and go with trained handlers who are our employees, and that makes such a difference for our youth. Wilmer Public Schools provides school service on site for all of our youth, and we have a nice partnership with them. Our team of teachers work really hard to provide curriculum that is varied. In one classroom, you may have a 7th grader up to a 12th grader. So really that continuum of services, along with hands-on activities that they have implemented, that's provided a great program. We have fantastic employees. We've worked really hard since COVID. As mentioned earlier in this meeting, a lot has changed since COVID, and a lot of changes in our employees. And we are really encouraged by the employees we have who work really hard and implement the training that we have in place, making a difference for our youth. Our buildings, we've done a lot of work over this last couple of years to make sure that our physical space is matching the high quality services we provide within the buildings. We've put in new carpet, working on updating our paint inside our buildings, as well as some furniture updates to really make that difference. Moving forward, there are some next steps that are needed for our services and programs at Prairie Lakes within the area of technology. We are looking to replace our outdated metal detectors to ensure that we have a safe environment with the need for those metal detectors. Also looking at the electronic data collection system. We do not currently have an electronic system. We use paper pencil for our well-being checks, monitoring our youth, as well as documentation for medication. So taking a look at that, as well as devices that our youth use for virtual court, virtual therapy sessions, and then family visits that are virtual. And then our camera monitoring system is also outdated. So those are kind of our next steps of where we're headed to continue to make an impact. Questions that you have?
Yes, thank you. I also like to add that there's a request for ARPA dollars of $75,000 to help fund some of those requests, and that's going to be coming forward to the board too as well. But could you just quickly, since we are running short on time, but share a little bit about how many employees you have, the joint powers, the benefit to the county of costs of placements here, and anything else you'd say about those nuts and bolts of it. I just want to share that I went over the budget, or the bills to be paid, and I saw on the jail budget, there was $50-some thousand just this last month we approved today for children at your placement. And I just keep thinking that we do get a reduced rate there, and that was, I don't know, it came to quite a bit of dollars that we saved on that, but it's such a valuable resource to our community. Otherwise, we'd have to take these adolescents to some other place to be housed. So please continue.
Yes. So we are really blessed in our community and our county here to have Prairie Lakes Youth Programs. Of course, I'm biased. I really like Prairie Lakes Youth Programs. It's a great place to be. But there are very few juvenile detention centers now in Minnesota. And so the handful or 10 or so counties, such as Candy-Ojai County, that have a facility like ours are really fortunate. The rest of the counties in this state have to work on securing contracts or agreements with facilities like Prairie Lakes to be able to find a bed. We, on a daily basis, turn away between, it varies, but many days, multiple phone calls of people saying, we need a bed, do you have a bed? And we have to say no to those counties that do not have those agreements in place with us, or our owners, such as Candy-Ojai County. So we're fortunate that, this was established in 1991, and the foresight of the individuals at that time to make those decisions for Prairie Lakes, along with the other member counties. We have, it varies, about 100 employees across all 5 programs between full-time and part-time employees. Serving, when all our beds are full, we have 80 beds, so 80 youth up to at a time. Other questions that you had in that?
I thought of one that you didn't add.
Yeah.
Is there education provided there, and who provides that?
Yes, so Wilmer Public Schools provides school on site. 2 floors of our 1804 building is the school district. And then as youth, depending on their individual plans, they may have the opportunity to be able to go to the public school, the mainstream school, or an alternative site. But it's all individualized based on their needs in the non-secure and group home
And I think
programs.
Commissioner Berg asked about, is this a Candioi County operation, or is there a joint powers, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we are a joint powers board with 5 counties that provide that oversight. And then in addition to that, other counties will have a reserve bed contract.
And if if a youth comes into the program from, say, St. Louis County, and there's a cost to that, obviously, and if it's I call them a border student, somebody who's staying there, who pays the fee for that student?
Yes,
Or
so
that
first of all,
client.
if we have a bed available, we would consider taking that youth. Most of the time, we're full, making sure we meet that need for our owner and member counties. But beyond that, then that fee goes back to that county. And so we do have reduced fees for Candy Ojai County and the other member counties. There is a discount for that. Otherwise, the outside counties, like you mentioned, would pay our full cost per diem.
Thank you.
Just follow up on my
Yes.
question. I just would like to add to that too, that this is a program that really, other than placing children there, that we do not use any levy dollars towards at all. And as a matter of fact, Candioi County charges rent for the building and approximately $72,000 a year. So we actually receive income off this. And the Prairie Lakes Youth Program is also responsible as part of the contract to maintain the interior and the heat pumps and all that. And that's getting very expensive on an old building. And the county has responsibility for taking care of the outside, and which I understand we do need new windows and so forth, and the county is going to, I'm sure, be taking care of that. So it's a low cost to the county, and it's a valuable resource we have there from an economic point of view even, so, and for our
Commissioner
own
Anderson.
adolescents.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, it's kind of separate from this, but would we be able to get a tour? Is that possible sometime?
We did one a
Because
couple years ago.
I've asked for that.
yeah, you might
before.
have one a couple years ago, but I never went on it. So maybe it was before I got on or something. But because I'd like to tour it sometime, just so that I know what we're talking about when we.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Ms. Baker and I have been having conversations about that to get that on our schedules. And we know you're quite busy, but we would love to host and show you around.
Yeah, it was a real
Yeah.
valuable learning experience to go on that tour, even the part about the education. I knew the answer to that question before I asked it, because I learned it on that tour. So, Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Booth, thank you and for being here today and for the services that you provide. Appreciate it. I noticed that there's a chart at the end talking about the per diem rates. Are there any changes in this new contract to those rates?
Yep.
Do you want to jump in? or
Yes.
shall I?
So I believe I haven't introduced myself yet. So good morning. I'm Caroline Kahn. I have the opportunity to serve as the Health and Human Services Director. So today I'm bringing forward the host county contract. So it's an annual contract that Candy Ojai County hosts on behalf of the joint powers. And in that chart, you will notice a reflected 3% increase. A 3%
3%,
increase
okay, thank you.
to the daily rate. So what I'm here today is to request the approval of this host county contract on behalf of our joint powers counties, as Candy Ojai County is the host county.
So you've heard the request of staff. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I will move to approve this.
Commissioner Berg moves on the contract for Prairie Lakes Youth. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? I think we've had enough, actually.
Good program.
But if there is any more questions or comments, please do. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Chair, would
Ms.
you like?
Khan, you can stay up and present the public health fees. How much time do you need for that? I see 5 minutes. I think we'll get there.
It should be pretty brief, I hope, so. All right, well, what I have before you now is our public health fees for 2024. What you'll see is a reflected rate increase from 56 to 60 hours per hour for professional staff, and our Manto rate increasing from 35 to 40 as a reflection of increased cost of materials. All other rates within the 2024 contract proposed fees are reflective of the 2023 rates as well. But to justify our cost of input, our supervisor Denise had gone through this to make the most stewardly, prudent decisions for our county to meet these needs, but also covering our costs as well.
So
Mr. Chair, I will move approval of the Candido County Public Health 2024 fee schedule.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the public health fees. Do I hear a second?
I will second, Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Berg seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Do you want to do the next one that would take 5
Oh,
minutes?
we
as
got
well?
one more on.
Yep, it's our Prairie Lakes Youth Programs Nursing Services
Yes,
contract.
please
Oh,
proceed.
yes.
So now that the fees have been approved, then our annual contract with Prairie Lakes Youth Programs to provide nursing services through our public health department would be reflective of this new rate for the public health fees, would be the only adjustment seen through this. I would like to echo the opportunity. I've had a chance to get to know Dr. Booth over the past 4 months and have really enjoyed the opportunity to work with her and continue to see the ways that we can streamline services and better serve youth through our public health services as well. So right now, all you would see is reflective in this new contract would be the change of that $60 per hour.
So you heard the request from staff. How do you wish to proceed? I'll move on the contract between Prairie Lakes Nursing Services for Public Health Nursing Services for Prairie Lakes.
I'll second that too.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you guys very much.
Break.
If everybody here will indulge us with a 3-minute break, we'll take a very short recess and then we'll be back again.
That's-
We will reconvene the Kennewick County Board of Commissioners meeting, and thank you for your, we're off schedule by a fair amount today, so thank you for your indulgence. We're going to skip forward to the 11 o'clock item, the Planning Commission recommendation from Eric Van Dyken, zoning administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Eric Van Dyken, Kennewick County zoning administrator here today with a one action item from our Planning Commission meeting of November 13th. I believe you have the complete set of minutes in your packet. This action item today is a recommended approval from the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit for Tepe Tonka Club LLC for a proposed golf course in sections 13 and 14 of Lake Andrew Township. You will recall that in early October, the county board acted on the environmental review document, the EAW, making a negative declaration on the need for an EIS, and that allowed us, completing the environmental review allowed us to proceed with permitting. And so we're at the stage here where the public hearing has been held. The Planning Commission has considered all relevant data, including the entire file of the EAW, and they are recommending approval of the request. You'll note in the minutes the findings as typically presented. There are also there's also a pretty significant list of proposed conditions. This is a combination of conditions originally drafted by staff, and then also incorporating some conditions that the township had requested. They had requested a pretty good list of conditions, many of which the Planning Commission did adopt, some of which were not adopted for several reasons. Some of them were redundant within themselves. Some of them were redundant within what the county had already proposed or staff had proposed. And some of them, particularly on the advice of the county attorney, were not deemed to be good for the county to be adopting, for some for reasons of liability and other for reasons of legality. So that is, I guess, just a quick overview, maybe too quick, I'm not sure, but I'm glad to answer any questions if need be. It was a pretty significant public hearing that was held. I think many of you were there, so probably saw firsthand that the discussion was significant that evening. And we're thankful for the work of the Planning Commission in sorting through these type of requests for us.
So you heard the recommendation from staff regarding the planning and zoning conditional use permit request. How do you wish to proceed? Commissioner?
Can we ask questions now, or do you want us to make a motion and then have discussion, or how?
Well, the questions you asked, are they dependent on the motion?
Well, yeah, I think I got a couple that are kind of.
Okay.
Okay, so, thanks, Mr. Chair. Under the conditions, you have number 6, on-site dining shall not be open to the general public, but must be used only by members and their guests. I thought it was, a private type place to begin with, but why is that restriction put in there? Do you have any information on that?
That would be because this request is for a single conditional use, and a restaurant is a different category of use, a restaurant that will be open to the public. So as dining as it's available for the members is part and parcel to the golf course use, and it would have potential different impacts than a restaurant that's open to the public. So things like traffic, sewage treatment needs, any number of different things rise to a different level. And because we're only considering that use and the things that are commensurate with that use, that's why it would be restricted in that way.
Okay, so in the future, though, if they wanted to open up to the public, would that be able to be addressed in the future, or is this restricting them from forever?
They would have to address, they would have to ask for a different conditional use permit to pursue
But
that.
they could do that, is what I'm, okay.
And did you have a second question?
Well, yeah, some of these just seem like they're soul limiting, and that's why I'm kind of asking questions about it. And then condition number 23, it says no more than 300 persons at any one time may attend a special event. Are they ever planning on having tournaments or anything like that? You'd think that there'd be spectators and it would go over that number if they had something like that.
Couple things to note on that. So they have talked, without any real definitive plans, but they have talked about potentially hosting some of events. They have indicated a desire not for them to be large events. This is a number that we have reviewed with the applicant, and they were amenable to that number. And then you would note there at the end, there is a clause there that would allow them to be authorized for more. I think what that would allow for is that if we needed to make sure we were coordinating with any other departments within the county, that we would have some maybe advanced warning. So let's just say they had an event and for whatever reason, they were anticipating it being a little larger and they talked to us, we would have a chance maybe at that point to talk to Public Works, to talk to the Sheriff's Department, if there were any needs associated with a little larger proposal, that we could make sure we were accommodating that and, that we didn't have, we was clear that we weren't having overflow traffic on, or on the county road. And if there were any law enforcement needs or anything like that. So I think it was probably a good in-between type of number.
Okay, but it's not necessarily banning them from ever doing something. They just have to apply for another permit
Well, this could be administratively approved for something larger, because of that last clause.
All right.
All right, I'd entertain a motion on the staff findings or recommendation for this conditional use permit.
Mr. Chair, I so
Mr.
move a motion to approve this conditional permit with the following listed conditions and findings.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the conditional use permit as presented by Planning and Zoning and staff. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Gardner, or Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, there were a number of conditions added at the request of Lake Andrew Township. Can you speak to that generally?
Yeah, if you look at the list, the first 13 that you will see there are conditions proposed by staff. Conditions 14 through 27 are conditions as proposed by the township. There are some of those that did have some alteration upon recommendation of staff, but those are ones that the township felt would be helpful. Again, I think the township proposed 33 conditions, so there were 19 other ones that were not adopted. Some of these I would offer are maybe not terribly impactful one way or the other, but aren't bad language to have in one way or the other. And certainly we were desirous of taking seriously that input from the township and incorporating as many of those into the permit as we could. These were all reviewed with the applicant, not as a way of deferring to them to say, we want you to approve per se, but it is a pretty common procedure to talk about things with an applicant to make sure that you don't have things at significant odds. Maybe there's something that we would propose that does not account for or really understand something about their proposal well, or how it might be limiting. And the courts have often given a significant level of deference to conditions that the applicant has agreed to. And so there's some real strength in that approach.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
I guess I want to thank Eric and his staff. I think they've done a lot of work on this. This isn't a simple little house project. It's got a lot of layers and a lot of things that are involved in it. I guess I'd also like to thank all the people that have showed up for the hearings. I mean, I think that's great that people have a chance to be heard and speak their opinion. Everybody was respectful, and I thought that was a great hearing that they had for the planning and zoning the other night. I just think that my biggest thing is that if the golf course adheres to the conditions and the findings and does what they have promised for the community, I guess that's my ask and my hope is that they will be good neighbors and do their part to be a good part of the community.
So any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Mr. Van Dyken.
Thank you.
All right, backwards here. Mr. Odens.
Here we go.
Resolution 2023-42, Dover Township LRIP support.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I've actually got, preface this, I've got 3 local road improvement program projects before you, but we'll start with the first one, and that's Dover Township. Just as a little bit of a background, a reminder to the board and to the public, this is a local road improvement program, LRIP, as we commonly refer to it as. We've done and supported these projects in the past. We've been a recipient of one, namely our County Road 2 in the Howick Edition area. So I've got 3 of them, and this is it is a grant, competitive grant. So there is no guarantee that they're going to get the money. There's no guarantee by anybody, but it is a great opportunity for people to apply because there's 3 different funding sources. One's for trunk highway purposes, one's for more township related purposes, and then one's for like rural road safety, which would be the county purposes. So the first one that we've got before you is Dover Township, and they are applying for a project. And what I'm going to do is flip it on the screen. The project length for their project is 2.8 miles, but I believe the project itself for the internal road network is about a 3.8 mile project. But the project is going to go from our County Road 25 northerly up to County Road 27. I know that they're also going to have an open house on this, I believe, on November 27th with here and to present their project to their constituents along there. But the project would be to rehabilitate or recondition or reconstruct along with a bike trail for pedestrians this section of road. And I just briefly want to just show you the Dover Township, they all of them, but has got more of an extensive plan that this is phase 1 of 4. And so I just want to make sure that the county board is aware of that. But if you look here, they've got phase 1, which is the project that we're talking about today. Phase 2 is the southerly piece, would tie into kind of the Sunray area up to it. Phase 3 would tie into our Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center, and then phase 4 would finalize with a loop. So you'd have a pedestrian loop in this area. So this is a well thought out plan. This project itself is about a $4 million project that they're requesting money for. So like my recommendation to the board is on all of these, we have to do a support resolution and then agree to be the fiscal agent for these funds. And my recommendation is to support this and authorize the chair and administrator to sign on behalf of the county.
So you've heard the recommendation from staff on resolution 2023-42. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-42.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on 2023-42. Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
So we have a second. Any questions or comments?
I just have a quick comment. You didn't show the very last page there, but this is where the people were on the bicycles.
Yep.
Yep, and I would just like to mention that Richard Swenson was one of the bicyclists. He's since passed away, but he was on the township board of Dover Township, and how appropriate. And I'm sure he'd be very proud of this setup as well, as being part of the Glacier Lake Trail.
So,
Good deal.
yeah, so the question I had, Mr. Odens, is the $4 million, is that the entire project or the current phase?
This phase,
Yeah.
you know, and what,
And a follow-up question to that, does Dover Township need to approve match, or if they approve any sort of match, will that enhance their scoring?
it does. And I think what's critical to all of this is the grants are due on December 8th. So they need the support resolution and the fiscal agent resolution to continue it forward. And now they're going to have the open house, the public meeting. They will finalize what the people want, if you will, and then finalize their dollar request. Because I know that this is a tight corridor. I know we've talked about this corridor for years. I know they've talked about it for years. We've been out there just as like, what can we do? I think they've had a consultant. And then the part that we wrestle with is the proximity to like our county trail system, the city of Wilmer's trail system, and the traffic, the commuter traffic, the intersection of County Road 25 and 7123. So there's just a lot at play here.
So the county does have a fairly big role to play here outside of sponsoring the.
We do, because it's a large.
It impacts our.
It's a large
our facility.
population group that does impact our system, their system, and, you know, just the whole livability of this area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we are
Looks like a
at the
great
table.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did have a quick question,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. The road, are they going to be trying to straighten that road out at all, or are they going to just leave it basically as it is? Because it is
So that's a
pretty
little bit
curvy.
that's a little bit of the discussion, and I'm not a part of that discussion, other than
Okay.
I've been at numerous meetings with the township. I shouldn't say numerous meetings, but they'll ask me like, you know, is this a good program to apply for grants or whatever? But, you know, you hear comments like, some people think people go too fast, so if you straighten out the curves.
Then they go faster.
Then they can go faster. The people that want to walk on either a trail or the road, they don't mind the curvature of the road. And then there's an element of charm by having a curvilinear road through there, because it creates a nice neighborhood. So you balance, it's a little bit like the analysis we used when we did the golf course trail. You know, you balance all the needs and wants of the people, that if you want a livable community, and sometimes that means walkable. And so that's what the rest.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on resolution 2023-42. How do you, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. You may proceed with 2023-.
The next one is a 2-mile project that Edwards Township is looking at, and it's a cut across project. Here's Raymond, and here's our County Road 7 that comes into Raymond. And currently what people do is they'll and then here's our County Road 1, and the beat piler is going to be right here. So what people do is they want to get here, so they either come through town and come up to there, or they cut across to R1 and come south. And so this road gets it's an economic driver for them. It's a gravel road, and it's not currently a full 10-ton. It's a township gravel road. So they want to consider this as improving that to a 10-ton road. It may remain gravel, but it is a cut across for heavy commercial as well as residential to get over to 1 and 23. So it's my recommendation to support this project and recommend authorization of the chair and the administrator to sign on behalf of the county.
So you heard staff's recommendation on resolution 2023-43. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-43.
Commissioner Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Then the last one is ours, and this is one that we had a discussion at our last Road and Bridge meeting. It's a short 2-mile project. It's on our County Road 137. And it would go from this inlet area down here northerly up to County Road 28. This is a road that, as we remember, we have our federal funds, we have state funds, we have wheelage tax. This is a road that doesn't have a designated funding source. So there's a good thing is because we can apply for local road. So it's a great candidate for us to apply for grant money. The downside is that we have to do the match. And so we don't have a funding source to do the match. So we would probably consider this to be a 2026 project or a 2027 project because we need to find the match because it would need to be levy dollars. But, so we would adjust our construction program to the soft costs would have to be matched by the county. So, but it is a good project. It's in line with our bike and trail plan. It's in line with, it would be the last time we've improved it would have been 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. So it's eligible. So what we would do here probably is rehabilitate the road. We would do some milling, notch out the shoulders, provide 4-foot shoulders, and then do a bike trail consistent with what we had for the petition. So that's our request. So
before we consider a motion on that, you brought up the trail and the petition on road, shoulder
it would be
trail
grade
or off trail?
separated.
Grade.
It would be a separate
Trail.
Yep.
Yeah. There's, I think, was there 400? There was a big petition that was big on that. And so I think this is a great project, but I shouldn't speak before I ask for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we pass Resolution 2023-44.
We have a motion on the floor for 2023-44. The chair will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, so we did the 11 a.m. one. I'm going to skip ahead to Corey Smith. I see that Corey is here, and allow him to do his presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Corey Smith, Director out at Glacial Lake Sanitary Sewer and Water District. Today I'm before you for Resolution 2023-45, and it's for consideration of assessments pertaining to the GLSSWD delinquent water and sewer use. This year there are 7 different accounts that are delinquent in either their water and or sewer use. If you go to the resolution, I'll just go through the parcel numbers and state their amount. The first one on the list, 27-606-0010, has a total of $293.09. Second parcel, 27-300-0160, for a total of $666.37. Next parcel, 27-774-0030, for total of $1,735.50. Next parcel, 27-500-0045, for a total of $3,710.72. The last one on the first page is parcel 27-789-1610, for a total of $822.31. The one on the top of the next page, please note the address is correct on there. The parcel number is not. The correct parcel number is 21-525 200 for a total of $1,005.16. And the last one, parcel number 27-386-0820 for a total of $243.43. So I guess just a little bit about this. Throughout the year, City of New London does our billing for the district. They send out letters monthly stating their delinquent dues. And then once we get later on in the year, the district, myself, we also send out letters saying that your delinquent amount is going before the Glacial Lakes Commission. Commission passed it, now it's going to the county board. Then after today, we'll send out another letter stating that if it was approved or not approved, that it will be going on the tax assessments for next year. So at our last Glacial Lakes Commission meeting, we brought this forward for them to review the status of the delinquent accounts, and they approved sending it to the county board today. So with that, it is staff's and Glacial Lakes Commission's recommendation to adopt Resolution 2023-45 and recover the outstanding delinquent account balances.
So you've heard staff's recommendation on Resolution 2023-45. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll move Resolution 2023-45.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. I would note that this comes before us pretty much every year. This might be a little bigger list than we normally see. In the past, we've had, I remember one parcel that was on year after year after year. I think that was just that party's way of paying their bill every year along with their taxes. And that might be what some of these folks are doing. But anyway, they've all been notified, and so this is the process. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real brief question here. I'm assuming that you're asking this with the change in that parcel number.
Correct.
And I notice on the very last item on our screen, it doesn't list a city.
Okay.
It's New London.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want to assume, and I figured that you'd want that part of the final resolution.
All in favor of the motion?
I got
Oh,
one
I'm
more.
sorry.
I got one more. You kind of addressed it, I think, but is there these people ever give a reason why they're not doing it? Do they think they don't have to, or what's the reason for not paying it?
It does always get captured on the property assessments the following year. I cannot answer why they don't. I mean, obviously, you look at some of these, the late fees add up more than the actual bill would be. I know, like I said, City of New London sends out bills, and then, once the district starts sending out our letters, every once in a while, we do get a chunk payment that, some of these cut it down in half, but I can't give you a good answer why they don't.
Okay, thanks.
All right, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, thanks, Corey. Okay, next up, Summit Carbon Solutions. Boy, we're almost back on track here. For an update, Patrick McCarthy and Scott O'Connick. Am I saying that right?
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And for the record, I introduced you, but you say who you are and who you represent.
Sure. My name is Patrick McCarthy. I work in a public affairs, public relations role with Summit Carbon Solutions.
I'm Scott O'Connick. I'm Minnesota project manager for the project.
Perfect. And do you guys have the emergency preparedness PowerPoint? Is that in front of you? Okay, perfect. So this is just a brief presentation, our emergency preparedness presentation, and then we can kind of get in a little bit later to where we stand in the Minnesota regulatory process, and then Scott can answer a lot of the questions that you may have after that. So this emergency preparedness presentation, it's part of our public awareness campaign that we're doing. We just want to enhance the safety practices and contribute to the likelihood of a dispersion and the potential impact that would have. So who we're keeping informed are residents in high consequence areas, local and state emergency response and planning agencies, and local public officials like yourselves. What you need to know about CO2. CO2 is heavier than air, and it can gather in enclosed or low-lying areas if there's inadequate ventilation.
And then what you may see if there was a dispersion of the pipeline, you would see a white vapor cloud, an area of frozen ground in the summer, and bubbling pools of water. And then you may hear some depressuring. But it is important to remember that pipelines are the safest mode of transportation. They're safer than rail or truck, and that the incident rate of any oil or gas pipeline is extremely, extremely low. For leak detection and prevention measures, here's kind of the state-of-the-art technology that we're going to be using for system oversight. It's going to be, the pipeline's going to be monitored in real time by Real Summit staff 24/7. And it has enabled remote operation when necessary, and it features automatic valve shutdown in the event of a significant pressure fluctuation. As for the technology that we're going to be using on site on the pipeline, this is industry-leading technology that's been installed in over 1,500 pipelines across the world. It monitors pressure across the entire system, and it's got instrumentation located at capture facilities, valve sites, pump stations, and sequestration sites. It has the ability to detect even the smallest leak, and it provides that real-time information that is monitored 24/7, as mentioned by the control room. For the emergency preparedness, here's kind of a schedule or a timeline of where we stand and how we're engaging with key stakeholders as our project progresses. We are still in the planning and permitting phase, so we're meeting with PHMSA's technical staff, starting discussions with emergency managers, and then we're going to broaden that communication a little bit later down the line with those emergency managers. And then, of course, we're meeting with county officials like yourselves. Once we receive those permits and our construction schedule is developed, we're going to make sure to meet with emergency managers again to discuss what equipment they need should there be any dispersion. We want to make sure that they're prepared. Summit is planning to issue grants in the form of $50,000 to each county to purchase the necessary equipment or the equipment that the emergency manager deems necessary. And then there's also a payment for it's X amount of dollars per mile that's within the county. So Kandiyohi County is scheduled to have about 30 miles of pipeline within its borders. So X amount of dollars times 30 is kind of where we're at on top of that $50,000 for equipment. And then prior to operation, we're going to be meeting with first responders, make sure that everyone is aware if there were a dispersion, where they need to be, what equipment to use, all of that stuff, make sure that our bases are covered there and everyone feels good about any potential response to a dispersion. And then during the operational phase, we're going to keep meeting through annual tabletop exercises. That's PHMSA regulation. And then if new emergency staff are brought on or the department head deems it necessary, we will continue to meet with staff as needed to continue that training. Then here's just a fun little life cycle graph. So right now we're in the planning phase. The biggest thing is risk management, setting our goals of how we want to operate this pipeline, and of course that's as safely as possible. During the do phase, making sure that we're executing the plan that we set out while the pipeline is in operation. The check phase, is there anything that we could be doing better? Is there more training that's necessary? We will be there every step of the way to help with that. And then the act phase, continuously prove our training, whatever it is that we need to improve, we'll continue doing that, and that cycle continues. That is the end of the presentation. It's all to say that safety is the number one priority of this pipeline. I've heard it a million times. If we can't do it safely, we shouldn't do it at all. So we want to meet with you guys, keep you in the loop, and then, as I mentioned, emergency managers will be contacted a little more frequently as the pipeline here ramps up. For the regulatory process here in Minnesota, We filed a permit application for that northern line. If you remember, that's Otter Tail and Wilkin County. The other routes, the other part of the pipeline here in Minnesota will come a little bit later down the line. But we expect a response or a, approval or not approval in June or July. Okay, midsummer next year. So exciting stuff. It's coming along really nicely, and yeah. Is there any questions regarding the
Any
presentation?
questions for Patrick or Scott?
Scott O'Connor.
Scott, thank you. Did you have anything you wish to share with us?
No, the project in a whole, with the 5-state area of Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then Nebraska and Minnesota are kind of in different stages. Iowa, we just finished up our hearings with the PUC. We're waiting for a response on our permit there. North Dakota, we were denied for a couple reasons. Mostly a lot of it was Bismarck area. We filed for reconsideration, addressed all the findings that they had within the report. They granted us a reconsideration. We're still waiting on dates of when that will all fire up. And then in South Dakota, we're still working with the counties. It's a little bit different there, but we're working with the counties on the route to file our permit application in South Dakota. And then Minnesota, Patrick kind of touched on it. We have the one section actually in the EIS phase right now. The Department of Commerce has it, and I spend a lot of time answering a lot of questions on that currently. So that's kind of where Minnesota sits right now too.
Any questions? Commissioner Dale Anderson.
I guess this is maybe my ignorance, but let's just say there was a leak. How far away from the pipeline do you expect that leak to go? I mean, I know it depends on winds and all that, but is there kind of an average of how far that would go out?
So when we get into the dispersion and dispersion modeling and things of that nature, a lot of it has to do with it. The pressure at that local spot. Is it a pinhole leak? Is it a rupture? What is the wind doing? Things of that nature. And these are all. That's why it's. I wish I could just give you a direct answer.
No,
right?
and I understand.
It's very tough. But I will tell you that dispersion modeling and all that kind of stuff in Minnesota is great. I mean, it's not. There's nothing going to be held from anybody. Okay. We're sharing this in other states with emergency managers and all that stuff already currently. There's a design from engineers that'll take over worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario is a guillotine break basically with zero wind, right? I mean, where that stuff kind of hangs, like it went, and you got to look at the cloud like it goes up and then it would kind of come down because right, it's heavier than air. With wind, that really actually, so when the wind plays part of it, you're like, oh, that's going to drift, and then it's going to be more dangerous out there. And that's actually kind of wrong too, in theory too, because actually as that wind, mixes with that, the oxygen and the parts per million of the CO2 concentration actually goes down. So depending on the situation, you may have a different answer, but before this would ever go, into operation or anything like that, our dispersion models will be shared and shown.
Any questions for Scott or Patrick? And I think I might know this, but the the permitting process is not conducted by the counties in Minnesota. It's by the Public Utilities Commission.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I really want to thank you for coming and keeping us in the loop. I've been kind of curious what was happening at this stage, because you read things in the paper, but I know it's probably not even necessary at the stage that you do this, but I appreciate your attention and informing the public what could possibly be coming up.
No, and I want to thank all of you too for your time. A lot of it too is the initial rounds, and I know Joe was the one kind of, I've been here before with Joe, but Joe retired again for the second time, moved down with his family in Texas.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, so kind of Patrick has been stepping in to fill a lot of this role. But a lot of the first time was a lot of project explanation, what we're doing, why we're doing, that kind of stuff. And we never got the time to focus on the safety aspect. And safety's first, above all, before all. So, and it's nice this time around that we get to talk about that a little bit more. So I really appreciate your time.
All right, if there's no further questions, thank you guys for coming up and
Thank
giving
you
us
all.
an update.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
You as well. All right, we are to the ARPA allocation discussion. Kelsey?
Good morning, Commissioners. Sorry, I was just getting to the right page in on my laptop. Kelsey Baker, Candioi County Administrator. In your packet is included the ARP recommendations that I've heard from staff. You also have on the table in front of you an updated version of that. I've also gave that to the papers as well. There's one slight change, and I can go through the document that you have. So what happened and what's really occurred in the last 3 weeks or so is that we got direction from the county board to send out an email and to ask department heads what we could use the remaining unallocated dollars with for county use. And so what's included in this list is that such. But it's up to the county commissioners if that's how we want to use these funds. Within there is the grant writer, that $35,000, and in your handout, I did see we have $24,000 remaining dollars that were a carryover from 2022 that we had used for grant writer that you had already allocated, $78,000. We have 24 of that remaining. So I just put that 24,000 in as a carryover that if we were able to use that we could have that opportunity. The federal lobbyist, we've allocated $60,000. I just sent an email to the chair and the vice chair yesterday because the county engineer and I have met with 2 separate organizations regarding federal lobbyists. We're kind of working out a plan on how we bring that to the full board to help make a decision if this were to be approved. I left offset payroll in there just as it's up to you all. If you want to say, no, we want to allocate $300,000, I just want you to be able to think about that. For environmental services, we need to update our comprehensive land use plan. That's going to be a lot of work, a lot of staff time. We would probably have some constituents work on that with us. The overall cost for that project is roughly around $100,000. And so I've allocated $25,000, which we can move around if needed. Facilities, we're looking at robotic vacuums, Health and Human Services, iPads for interpreting and equipment. This is a guesstimate, around $6,000, and then marketing and communications for immunization, such as billboards, would be roughly around $8,000. We've talked about this at the last one. Public Works, the cultural resource study, around $50,000. And this is where that correction is. I'm sorry, it's not a park playground. The allocation would be the $71,280. That would be to offset the Glacial Lake Sewer and Water District wages from 23 to 24. And I will let Mel explain that more once we have questions. The hydro mulcher I left in there, Mel had checked with staff, that would be recommended that we leave that in there. The sheriff, the Cortico, as I talked about the last time, this is an online training for our staff. Like I said, professional, personal development classes that they can take, leadership classes. So we would offset the first year for that. And technology, I've listed the areas, and I believe Scott is in the room. If you do have any more in-depth technology questions as well. But I've left that at that $500,000 with earmarks that we would use those dollars with the discretion to the IT director and the administrator to use those funds for security needs if available. But we want to leave that $500,000 umbrella and overall discretion up to the IT director and myself. Because if we hit a road bump with something with storage or whatever it may be, Scott and I would be able to work together and shift it. It would just be towards safety, security needs. It would be within the umbrella of these issued. County partners, the housing, I left that the same, the state aid dollars, the $122,693. And then $180,000 of the ARPA funds to go into the Housing Trust Fund to start that. I know I've spoken with the city administrator. I think once we make our move, they will make theirs on putting dollars towards the Housing Trust Fund. Like I said at the last meeting, it's not maybe what Commissioner Gardner thought, but it's somewhere to start. And I think that's something that we need to do because we started this Housing Trust Fund. I think we can get that to grow moving forward, but this is where we can start. As Holly Booth said earlier, the Prairie Lake technology needs, she explained those needs. That allocation would be $75,000, and that broadband request for $114,692 would come out of the ARPA dollars. The remaining dollars, if approved, the $128,758, I would like to put that back into our health insurance reserves because we did the health insurance reset. And so we're taking some money out of the reserves. This is not the dollar amount that we're taking, don't get me wrong. But we would be able to put some dollars back into that reserves moving forward into 25 then with wages. Like I said, Scott is here if you have any questions. I know you talked about at the last meeting, you had some questions regarding logging, the logging project and firewall and storage. But if you want him to come up and answer any of those questions, or if Mel wants to explain the Glacial Lakes wages.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful if we heard from staff on your part of it. I don't care who really goes first. Before they come up though, the example on public or technology at $500,000 and then the discretion up to IT director and administrator, that would be restricted to IT though, right? It wouldn't go from, say, technology over to public works or health and human services, because, yeah.
Correct.
I'm
that would
very
be the ask.
uncomfortable with moving stuff from one department to another, so.
Right, nope, that's the understanding I have along with Scott, is that $500,000 would remain just towards technology. And if you all recall, this was prior to my time too, it has already been allocated that for 2022, 2023, and 24, there have already been some technology needs approved. Using the ARP dollars, this was approved prior to me. And so I'm allowing IT to continue moving forward with those requests. I believe you all have gotten this in the past. If not, I can always get you a copy. But Scott is still moving forward with those technology needs. And I think if it is approved and we can look at a grant writer, there are grants out there regarding cybersecurity. There's grants out there if we were to get a consultant. So there's some opportunities that we could have once this is all allocated, that we could slow down and really look at where we would go for this grant. But I will let Scott come up and talk about technology now.
Before you do, was your correction for Chelsea or for
I
Scott?
wanted
How about
to
you?
hear.
I had a question for you.
Mr. Chair, yeah.
For Scott or Kelsey?
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, so I just wanted Scott to come.
All right.
We like Scott.
Good morning, Scott Hovland, IT Director for Kainaway County. Are there specific questions you want me to address? Some of the big ticket items here I can hit, but welcome a few of your questions first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, could you just explain, because I've heard some of the numbers from you in the past about how many times we get attacked or whatever you want to call it. And
Right.
so that, people might look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of money to be spending on cybersecurity, but it is a real threat. And if you could just kind of explain it for maybe people listening in.
Right, yep, and when rewind a year, we were here and we talked about how often and the threats that we get. So back in August of 2022, we had 56,000 attempted connections just from Russia and China. Our WatchGuard is another layer that we have of our firewalls that prevented over 3 million attacks through that device. So we put some things in place, we've changed some procedures, and then we've worked fairly heavily with the BCA, Minute, the Security Operations Center for Minute, and we were put in a beta program with the state of Minnesota that I think has rolled out to quite a few other counties now, where they put us behind a IPS, IDS, an intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system. And since that, let's see, our numbers are down to like 10,000. So from millions to thousands, we're still getting somebody that's knocking on the door frequently. So we have some work to do, and we're every day, multiple meetings and working with other counties on what are you doing, not as the preventive, but unfortunately I've had conversations with IT directors in counties that have been compromised.
Yep.
And I think we all know of several of those. It wasn't good times. And so we've changed our procedures, and we're trying to implement other technologies up front as well as on the back end as to how do we have our data elsewhere. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we're going. One of the things we're looking at is putting another set of firewalls in that only does blocking of things from other countries. Right now, we're having some troubles with the state to say, we don't need to see anything from Venezuela. We don't need to see anything from, wherever. Not that that's where all of our attacks are coming from, but we are going to put some devices in to kind of build the shell. And we may have to, then we'll have some flexibility too to say, okay, one of our departments has a contract with, a hovercraft in Russia, right? Maybe we need to open up certain things and not a blanket. But those are some of the technologies that we're looking at. One of the big drivers of this threat is access to our systems through our VPNs. And, recently we made some changes to our, staff procedures on how they authenticate and put some other technology in there. Not cheap again, but necessary. It was one of those where I got a call at 5:30 in the morning from a consultant to say, hey, another county just got hit. So we made our change that morning, not to the desire of my staff. It's been, some long weeks, but it was the right thing to do. One of the things that's being driven by the BCA is the need for a SIM or a logging. I've just called it logging. It's a little easier to understand, but it's a security information and event management. What it does is it gives us, a dashboard of who is knocking on the door or what vulnerabilities do we have out there. All of our devices are talking to something. And honestly, we can't look at them all. So it's a system that uses AI, which we're all excited about, we're all scared of, right? But we couldn't do this without it. It's a metric. So we have worked in cooperation with quite a few counties. We've hosted some meetings. We had one in October where we had 41 counties represented in our building here to show off something that we were doing, something that Wadena was doing as a comparison, trying to get, hey, what do we do? We can't do this on our own. I got the price tag for the one that we did, and we would need several counties to be on board to make it, feasible. I won't give you that number because it would have ate up a good chunk of my my request. So, but with that, we look at teaming projects with Minute, the BCA, our neighboring counties, our counties across the state on how do we do this and leverage some money, whether it's through grants. It's difficult right now. One, the prices are kind of all over from our vendors. And thankfully for Minute, they've been paying for some of these things up front, but we also know that that day may come to an end. They're covering some event detection systems. So that's great. They can mitigate some of our issues that are happening, but it costs money. And the first year, free, it's one of those deals. This is great, free. It won't be free in the future. Hopefully they can, find that money, but that's kind of where we're at. They've also got another team there that meets with county staff. We're gonna start this in January.
Can I stop you just, when you say they,
They.
is that a vendor that?
No, this next one is about, Minute has a threat and vulnerability management unit. And that team would meet with our staff once a month to say, here's the things we detected, here's the updates that haven't been done, and who's gonna take care of it. So, again, just another set of eyes to help us out.
Speaking of eyes, mine are glazing over right now, so I just. Commissioner Berg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I think it's so important, I don't want ever, myself anyway, I can speak for only, that we get hacked into or we have some major problems because there wasn't funding available. And my question is this enough funding in the right places? And that's probably really hard for you to answer. But it sounds, your presentation, that you are doing your very, very best staying on top of all that change. Also with the AI, I really like AI. And I'm going to let you worry about the downsides because that's where it's going to be
There's cool
impacted.
things, but there's also a lot that, if we can do
and what we can
X,
do.
somebody smarter is doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Right?
So along that same line, you'll keep us posted what we could be doing as well as you see that if it's safe to do that way.
Right.
So, no, I like what you're doing, and my question is this enough funding for the logging and the firewall and technology consulting?
I hope so at this point. I can always
Come back
dream
for
of more. But no, I think at this point, my thought is Candioi County can't, one, pay for it all, but more importantly, we don't have the resources physically, mentally. There's a lot of people way, way smarter than the person standing before you that has their, pulse on this. And tomorrow might bring a whole nother pivot. That's about being flexible to what's the threat today, and how are we gonna pivot to stay ahead of it.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I follow up. Thank you. Yeah, it's not often we say to a department head, just let us know if you need more money. But I think you understand what I'm saying. And I appreciate what you're doing. It's a big challenge nowadays. And if you need more staff or whatever, I'm certainly going to, hopefully the county's going to be very supportive of that, to stay a step ahead of all this. And that's the hard part. You almost have to be about 3 steps ahead because they can pass you up so fast. And thank you.
So-
Thank you for what you're doing.
I'll back up under public meeting spaces, the second bullet point down, we, again, talking about the discretion of director and administrator for security needs. When you say security, you're talking about physical security, like keeping the bad guys outside the front door?
No, I think that was
Internet.
bringing up just
IT.
technology in those spaces. One of those was, redoing technology in this room would be part of that. That's been an issue for a while, and it's always been the discussion of what do we need to do, what do we want to do, and it's a heavy lift. At what point is it a Band-Aid, and what point is it a forklift? Right.
And Mr. Chair, go ahead.
I'm going to go to
Sure.
Commissioner Anderson first.
So, thanks, Mr. Chair. So you talked about where you had to change the VPN or you had to do something because you got a call 5:30 morning. Somebody else got hacked or whatever, their VPN. Now, was that just that we were lucky we didn't get hacked? Was that, it was, they
Maybe.
got it, but maybe
Maybe so.
it could have happened to us at that point?
It sure could. I think
So-
the question is not if we're ever going to get hit, it's when and how we're going to address that.
Yeah.
Right? There was just some things that we knew, we were working on a solution well before that, and we hadn't worked out a few kinks. And at that point in time, we said, we're close enough. If you can't work remote, you're going to come in.
Yeah.
That's
So I
just the way
kind
it
of
is.
look at it like, it looks at first like it's a lot of money, but if we get hacked and somebody get something from us, I mean, like ransomware or whatever, it could cost a lot more real quick, so.
So, this conversation is predicated on the ARPA dollars, the ARPA dollars. So we go through this, and the ARPA dollars are gone. It's a tough question because it's like making a prediction. Moving forward, let's say 3 years from now, we spent the ARPA dollars and now we continue to have security issues. What do you foresee as a increased budget item for IT security for a county like Kaneohe County?
Well, I think this next year is going to tell a lot of how we're going to phase this in and out. You know, right now we're doing a heavy lift once, right? And just like if we were to turn around and things that we used to wrap our hands around is, you know, computers on every desk. And then we worked on systems to say, we're not going to replace everybody's every year. It's going to be this department's every 3, this might be every 5, things like that. So we have some things in there. In conversations we've had, we talk about grants. Who's out there? I think the feeling from the IT community is there's going to have to be more money spent at the federal level, at the state level, to get us, you know, so that we all do the same thing. Because 1 week, we have partners across the state, that some of which we host here in Kaneohe. And we rely on them to do their utmost in security as well. And so having somebody looking for money is a big deal.
And I agree with that. And that's been my mantra since IIJA and some of the other acts have been passed. You mentioned partnerships and working with other counties, and what comes to mind for me is counties providing technology. You know, do they have if they had the money, would a consortium like that be able to provide to all the counties that buy services from them, or even as an a la carte to provide that kind of service?
You know, and it's funny you say that, because I did think of that, and I've talked to a few staff over there just as a, you know, what if? You know, that's not their niche today. Not that they couldn't spin off, and with what, 23 counties represented there, that's a good part of this, you know, a chunk of the state that at least has a voice. We're looking at MCCC, having some conversations there to how do we negotiate some of this. But yeah, you know, that's kind of where we're brainstorming. How do we put this together without leaning on, you know, I said, we can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, especially when you think about not only us, but think of our neighbors, you know. Do we have a program that maybe we get to 80%, or say we get to 100%, then what is a Swift County and a Renville County and a Meeker County, and all the counties, and the lower the population, the higher the cost per unit. And I just find it difficult to see everybody being able to spend $500,000 to satisfy their IT needs.
Right.
Because collectively, that's a tremendous amount of money.
We have been blessed, you know, in my 25 years here, of what the county board does for the IT department, and where we've come from walking desk to desk to working on a few machines to everything that blinks seems to have an IT call, right? Which is great. And you supported that. And Jay Kruna, as a previous director, we reached out to other counties too to say, hey, we can do a few things here to host some of your data, or trade off some things. You know, we have 2 counties that are talking about having their backups that sit in our back room. Okay, that's something simple we can do. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, did you have a question?
No, I just have a little story I want to share. I believe I was probably one of the first employees that had an individual computer.
Okay.
Way back then. And actually, I bought my own and brought it. And I know Jay, and I believe you helped me as well to set that up and use that, and use different ways you can make your work easier, and things took off. That's great. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank
We'll look forward to hearing more from you, maybe at another time. So Mel, you had some information you wanted to share?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm available for any questions that you have on the Public Works, but I can briefly go over them. The main one I think that was pointed out was the Glacial Lakes wages, with the condensing of the pay scale and the wages. The Glacial Lakes is an enterprise fund, and we had set our rate structure for '24 some time ago, and so this would be a one-time expense because we're going to update our utility rates starting in March of next year. So they would incorporate any impacts to wages and insurance for '25 and beyond. So the request on this one would be, it's actually about a $90,000 shortfall, but the administrator and myself had noted the $71,280 was a number that we had available, so that was our recommendation to this. So it's to offset an unexpected, if you will, wage gap and their enterprise fund is not supported by the levy, so it's supported by all the users in the district. And then the other one would be the hydromulcher. Maybe we do a lot more with the NPDES permit issues that we have in the county. We hydromulch almost everything right now. We just do it by hand. It's really slow. And so this would be probably a unit that would be a 20-year unit. I mean, we use it and just throw it in a 1 ton and go. So any other questions on any of the other things?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear. I get that we have ARPA dollars, and I understand because I sit on the commission at Glacial Lakes Sanitary Sewer and Water. They're an enterprise fund, meaning they have to pay that wage increase out of their fund, and it wasn't budgeted because they didn't know it was coming. And so the offset I see coming from ARPA, but yet it says park playground 71,000, and
that was a typo. Okay, so what we had in there at one time, I believe, maybe the park committee or even the county board, we were looking to start systematically upgrading the park equipment in all our parks. And so what we did, the city of Wilmer does a park unit almost every year, and so we talked about what is just a standard piece of equipment, furnished and installation, and it was $128,000. So when the administrator was putting this together and back and forth, it had stayed in there as park playground, but we took it off the table.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just to be really clear then, I'm a little confused on some of this, we have the $128,758, and what you're saying is we need to put $90,000 in addition to?
No. I think we're getting confused. We were struggling with, she had requested just what are some wants of the departments just so we have some speaking points and some things to debate.
Okay.
And one of the things was, it seems like in the comp park plan discussion, one thing we should do is start upgrading our park equipment. Okay, but that's not been vetted out. So which part do you pick? And how do you do it? And what do you use for equipment? So we just got an estimate. It was $128,000. Okay, just for sake of debate. Okay, that's something we can consider. Well, the administrator and myself talked the other day and saying, well, maybe we should vet that out a little bit more, and let's substitute the playground equipment, and let's do maybe a bigger one-time need, which is the enterprise fund up at Glacial Lakes, because that's more of a $90,000 hit. One-time hit, not an ongoing hit. It's an ongoing hit, but we can do it with the rate adjustment next year. Okay, so does that answer the confusion of that maybe?
And so, if I can just clarify, Mel said it best. We're just flip-flopping. Instead of having remaining 71,000, we're gonna move that up to offset those wages within Glacial Lakes. And like Mel said yesterday, it was that thought that you have at 2 a.m. And I thought, this doesn't sit right with me. This was one of the original requests that came in with Public Works, was to offset this one-time cost. And we get one shot. And so this made me a little nervous because we want to get these dollars allocated, and I understand that. But as I told Mel, I said, this hasn't sat well with me all weekend. This would be a one-time adjustment. And when Mel explained it, I said, let's switch that and just flip-flop it. And that 128, if you just want to have that go back to offset payroll cost, we can do that, or it just can go into the general revenue reserves or the health insurance reserves. I just know we want to get these allocated either soon.
Well, we do have a year yet, right?
Quite some time, I think.
Yeah.
Well, my understanding at the last meeting from the board was that we want to get this allocated. And then I think we don't want to push it too far. And Mel and I were on a call, like I said yesterday, with one of the organizations that we're looking at for a federal lobbyist. And she recommended we get these allocated. She didn't say like today by any means, but I said, oh, ironically, we're talking about this at tomorrow's board meeting. She said to maybe get that allocated within the next month or so, just in case something were to happen in Washington. And so if you don't feel comfortable and you want us to do more fine tuning, we absolutely can, and we can come back on the 7th as well with more concrete numbers, or with a different direction. If you have any recommendations, this is your opportunity. If you want to change anything, that would be something that feel free to talk to myself between this meeting and the December 7th meeting, and we can come back and report on that again.
I think the opportunity is now, so, I don't know who was first here.
Bill.
I guess my only question is, and I know it's been, the whole budgeting process has been kind of a wild ride, I would guess, for a new administrator, but I guess when you put in the offset payroll, if available, I mean, I don't see anything other than 128,000 that's left on the bottom, one way or the other, but I guess my question is, are you struggling with the budget yet to get that to work? Or is it, there's a reason you put it in there, I guess. Just highlight that.
Does it give me heartburn? Yes. Like I said at the September 5th meeting, what we did at the 11th hour, I would stand by night through and through with the wages. I would stand by that. I think the staff have deserved that. We listened to them, and we did the best that we could to our ability. I know our HR director, Connie Morton, it still gives us heartburn, but we stand by that recommendation, and we thank the board for approving that. When we approved the preliminary levy on September 5th, it felt like a little bit of a knee jerk because we had up until the end of September, we had one other meeting. And so we are doing well with the 2024 budget. We had over budgeted with wages for 2023, so we'll be able to carry over some of those dollars within our payroll budget into 24. This will all be talked about at the TNT meeting. But why I leave that in there is just because it can help offset even if it's one position, I think that can help. We have some new positions within the 2024 budget that I've left in there just because of certain issues as in the public works or health and human services within our eligibility division. But we're able to make it at that 5%, but I just think anything, Mel and I were just talking about the budget this morning, anything is helpful at this point, because I don't want to do more of a burden to the staff and the taxpayers. And so anything could help. And so if it's more than that 128, that's okay. But if it's not, I'm glad to see things go to county departments and to the constituents and our partners within these ARP dollars.
Is it a follow-up? Yes.
Yeah. I guess then my question is, and maybe this is a question for somebody else, but I guess I have a hard time with $50,000 for robotic vacuum cleaners that could be used for wages. That was kind of my thought, is that there's some things in here that maybe then could be used better for wages instead of, I call them toys, but maybe that's a terrible thing to say, but that's my question.
Okay. Yep, and that's something that we could easily turn around. When I was making this list, I wanted to at least highlight each department that submitted a request. And so that was why. But absolutely, if that 50,000 went to go to wages, that would be fine too. I think Andy would understand on that.
I appreciate what you said there, but I've thought many times out of Three Sisters, if we had a robotic, if we had a Roomba or whatever they're called for vacuuming, what that might do to our staff time, so. you
Well,
have-
that's true.
you have
There's-
to- you
there's
have
a
to
give
look
and
at
take, yeah.
The big picture too.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the same question as well, and I just would like to hear more about that because, you know, that is a big cost, but does it really pay off at this point? Or maybe we just approve one of the vacuums and see. But I just really want to go back now to make sure I understand this exactly. Is we're looking at, if we do approve all these up there with the idea that there's some flexibility that you could flip-flop some dollars here and there, and yet there'd still be 128,000 so much dollars left over. And that theoretically doesn't have to be spent until the end of next year, right?
No, it's got to be allocated by December 31st, 2024, and then we have until December 31st, 2026
You need to
to
allocate it.
spend the dollars,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
Whereas, and I believe this, I thought we had more time, but then being on that call yesterday
or did I?
with the gal in Washington DC, she said, I wouldn't wait too long to allocate these. So I think we have some time till the end of the year, but I don't know if we should wait.
Well, thank you for that update. That's
Yep.
really helpful. And along,
I want to be clear, the gal you were talking to, she's talking about a change in the administration, right? So we have until the end of 2024, because we can allocate and spend pretty damn quick.
so we can, yeah, okay, so then we could still, okay. And, okay, so of the 128 then, if we're going to be looking at some of these other things, like the fairgrounds, that would come out of that if we could make that decision. And what were some of the other things that weren't listed on here now that you brought up? Nothing, right?
I don't
That's
have
the-
anything.
That's the outlier,
This was kind
right?
of the fine tune from the staff.
Yeah.
Now I think it's up to the commissioners if you want to adjust things and move things around. I think the staff and I would all understand that.
I mean, could we then allocate, say, 50,000 at this point and see what happens or whatever to the fairgrounds?
Right now, I'd be more comfortable sitting on the 128, because we don't know what's going to come up as an
Yeah, no, I don't
opportunity.
have
And
an
I do
issue.
not want to be, all of a sudden, an opportunity or a need comes up and it's like, well, we spent everything, so.
Yeah, and if I could say, Mr. Chair, about the Fair Board, I would like to, if they are asking that amount of money, I would like it that you'd have like businesses or something kick in to kind of match it.
Absolutely.
Or,
Yep.
you know, just so it
that'd be
isn't just
something
handing.
that- yes,
you know,
we
so
would.
I would like a little more
You
discussion
find a
on that
match-
one.
You find a match for.
Yeah, yep. And
X
then I'd
amount of
also like a
dollars,
little more
yeah.
discussion, like the robotic
Like that.
vacuums like you brought up. I'd like to see what is it we're getting, you know, and so.
So for what I'm hearing, with administration, that would be okay to allocate. Facility, environmental services, are you okay with that comprehensive plan allocation?
Let's.
Or do you want to
do it
wait on
the
that
other way
too?
around. Can we do it where we take the things off, because it seems like most of
Oh,
the things
yeah.
were.
Yeah,
So if we took off the robotics for now
Okay,
and took off the 128 for now,
okay.
was there anything else that gave us heartburn here as we? Mel, could you talk a little bit about the cultural resource study?
Sure. Cultural resources is something that we do anytime we do any work in any park, or for that matter, any road project, but our road project incorporates it in our larger budget. But I do know that in the case of Big Candy East, you know, we're struggling a little bit with the cultural resources down there. And so I know that we had money kind of talked about we would spend down there. But we don't know what the final outcome is going to be or where the direction of the comp plan is going to be for the parks. But no matter what, we do know that if we do anything in that park, we would need to do some cultural resource work. And so the 50,000 is more something that I know that is going to be coming up probably in 2024. But as far as we don't have an estimate from a cultural resource consultant to know that it's $50,000. I mean, it could be 28,000 to 75,000. You know what I mean? We know it's going to be a number that's.
But when we have to do a cultural resource study, it's on us to pay for that, no
Correct.
matter if it's
Correct.
Games Lake
Yes.
or Diamond Lake or.
And so to me, it ties to a larger plan of what we want to do for our recreational opportunities in this county. And so, you know, we could get that And if it's not that much, we could sub-allocate something to somewhere else.
I think with that explanation, personally, I'm satisfied, so. So any other items that, give you pause? So if I understand us, the robotics, we'd like a little more information on the robotics to see, maybe a presentation by somebody who's used them or, you know, the company, and then the 128,758, to take that out of this approval. Otherwise, we do a blanket approval of the program as it's laid out.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yes. I would like to see that taken out too, but with the idea we revisit it, say, come March or May at that point. But also, I think we had that request from the fairground, fair board, that they might want to know somewhere down the road so they can budget and plan ahead. So that could be part of that at that time.
And I had
Does that
met
sound
with
reasonable?
Chad Lean and Denny Baker, my gosh, last week or this week. I just really got confused there. Last week or this week, and they had asked on the ARPA funds. And I said, bring it forth. It will be up to the board, but let them know that dollar amount so it gets that idea. And we put that out there. They're gonna try some fundraising, so I think March might be a good time to bring this all back.
Okay.
With where we're at with unallocated dollars in.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chair, if I can, I guess I partly don't want to rush this. I partly want to let the staff look at this one more 2-week period. I don't know why I feel that way, but that's just the way I feel. And maybe bring back the explanation of the robotic vacuums. But I think we aren't under a crunch timeline. If we need that money for the federal lobbyist, I think we can handle that individually. I think that's probably our push if we have to do that, from what you're saying, Kelsey. But I don't know why I have this gut feeling that we should just let staff hammer over this and ponder this for another 2 weeks.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, but that's what they did in bringing this to us.
I know.
And so they have planning that they got to take place. In fact, we're going to the conference here in a couple of weeks. So I'm sure they're going to be visiting with vendors that might be able to give direction in some of that. So,
sure.
You know, and if we, if there's something on here that, let's say the mulcher, just gonna use that example. And let's say I go to Mel and say, hey, this 20,000, we've come across whatever idea that we could do, or whatever department it maybe could be used for, if it's towards the Fair Board allocation. Let's start with that. I think Mel and I would be able to work together, and Todd Miller, and say, okay, we can wait on that. We'll budget for it in the next budget cycle or something. I think, so just because it's allocated now doesn't mean between now and December 31st, 2024, we couldn't go back and change, unallocate and reallocate it. But I agree with the chair's statement that we would like to get going on some of this stuff as well.
And bringing up he brought up the bathrooms. I'd like to know the number on those bathrooms. So,
They threw out a 300,000.
just for the bathrooms?
I think.
Yeah, that was just for the bathroom.
And they have how much of it? 10%?
0.
Well, if we approve the budget on December 7th, they'll have an additional 20,000.
No, that's going for the project that's just got done.
How come you spent that and it hasn't even gotten to you yet?
I'm not the treasurer.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion on the ARPA dollars.
Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve the balance of the list, sans the robotic vacuums, and the remainder of the 128,758. We hold those two items back and approve the balance of the list.
So you heard the motion, do I hear a second?
I will second that.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any further discussion or comments? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody, for the work you did on this, and I'm appreciative that broadband found that $600,000, so they didn't have to dip into any of that And
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you to Administrator Baker as well as the board for supporting and your help and work for the Prairie Lakes Youth Program grant or funding. Appreciate that.
So, I don't believe there is anything else left on the agenda, so I am going to dispense with report outs this week because it's been a long meeting. A reminder that next 2 weeks is the annual conference, and the next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if anybody's interested, you need to register ahead of time. If anybody's interested in attending a NACO meeting in St. Paul, that's next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So it doesn't cost you anything to attend, but you have to pay your own hotel bill if you do so. All right, with that, we are adjourned. That's it? No.